This podcast deals with adult subject matter, including depictions of drug addiction, prostitution, sexual assault, and rape. Parental guidance is suggested.
In the District Court of Oklahoma County, State of Oklahoma, the State of Oklahoma versus Daniel K. Holtzclaw, verdict, count 1, sexual battery. We, the jury, impaneled and sworn in the above entitled cause, do upon our oaths find as follows. Defendant is guilty of the crime of sexual battery and set punishment at 8 years. Count 5, guilty, punishment is set at 5 years. Count 8, guilty, punishment is set at 20 years. Count 10, guilty, punishment is set at 16 years. Count 11, guilty, punishment is set at 30 years. Count 13, guilty, punishment is set at 8 years. Count 14, guilty, punishment is set at 8 years. Count 15, guilty, punishment is set at 5 years. Count 16, guilty, punishment is set at 16 years. Count 27, guilty, punishment is set at 16 years. Count 28, guilty, punishment is set at 30 years. Count 29, guilty, punishment is set at 30 years. Count 30, guilty, punishment is set at 8 years. Count 31, guilty, punishment is set at 12 years. Count 32, guilty, punishment is set at 30 years. Count 33, guilty, punishment is set at 8 years. Count 34, guilty, punishment is set at 8 years. Is this your verdict, so say you all? All right, well, this will conclude the case of the State of Oklahoma versus Daniel K. Holtzclaw. The court is in recess.
And with that, many people thought they knew everything they needed to know about the allegations, investigation, and conviction of former Oklahoma City police officer Daniel Holtzclaw. But what if I told you you have never been told the entire truth about this case? My name is Brian Bates. I'm a licensed private investigator, and I was a member of Daniel Holtzclaw's original criminal defense team.
Officer Daniel Holtzclaw, with the police department for 3 years, is accused of raping and sexually assaulting women he pulled over while on the job.
He said, come on, just a minute. I said, sir, I can't do this. I said, you're going to shoot.
Your description of him.
He's black.
He's black male.
What did your daughter tell you?
She said, I met this really hot cop.
So this is good evidence?
Well, you tell me.
Is this good evidence? That's exactly the question I hope to answer in the coming weeks. Did Daniel Holtzclaw systematically prey upon the most vulnerable women within the community he had sworn to protect and serve? Or is Daniel Holtzclaw a scapegoat for all manner of political correctness and investigative incompetence? When I was first hired to help Daniel Holtzclaw's defense team prepare for trial, I was convinced I was working for yet another guilty client. And I didn't keep that opinion secret from Daniel. He had this routine. Every time we would meet, he would ask me if I thought he was guilty. And each time, I'd look him in the eye and I'd say, yes. Yes, Daniel, I think you did something. I just haven't figured out what it is yet. But each yes came with the caveat that I couldn't find a smoking gun. In fact, I couldn't even find compelling evidence of guilt of a single allegation. Originally, I felt Daniel Holtzclaw was guilty for the very reason so many others have felt he is guilty now. How could 13 women all point the finger at one man and he not be guilty of at least some of their allegations? But as I began to examine all of the discovery evidence, a more perplexing question arose. How could Daniel Holtzclaw commit 36 violent crimes against 13 women at 17 crime scenes and not leave a single piece of direct forensic evidence and not be observed by a single independent eyewitness? I was either dealing with a criminal mastermind or the unluckiest cop I'd ever met. It wasn't until I had read, watched, and listened to every piece of evidence that I could finally tell Daniel that I truly believed he is innocent. With that said, I'm not saying he is without some level of culpability. Over the next several weeks, even months, I will be telling the story of the allegations, investigation, and conviction of former Oklahoma City police officer Daniel Holtzclaw. While I may be biased in my opinion, I will be 100% transparent in my telling of Daniel's story. I will also be releasing every piece of discovery evidence in my possession related to this case. I will not trumpet reasonable doubt while concealing reasonable guilt. I invite you to take this journey with me and decide for yourself, is this good evidence? And when it is all said and done, was justice served or was justice denied?
Hello and welcome to everybody in the chat and on the panel. The last few months have been really, really intense. At least for us, they have, about reading these trial transcripts. We have, I don't want to say made fun of, but we have laughed about a lot of it, made fun of a lot of it, I guess you could say, honestly. But not to make light of the accusations, whether you believe the accusations or not, and not to discount the seriousness of what it meant for Daniel. Before we go any further, I just want to remind everybody, especially if you're new, to please subscribe to the channel. I know that some of you are here for the first time or coming back and wanting to learn from the beginning of this case. So just, subscribe to my channel. If you're subscribed to Foul Play and watching on their YouTube, that's fine. I don't mind that. But please subscribe to my channel. Foul Play is streaming it with me just to help us reach a greater audience. So please subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell to get all notifications. Like the video, please, and please comment. After the video, please leave comments and questions because I will definitely answer you. I or anybody else on the panel will definitely answer you and do the best that we can to address whatever comment or question you have. So all the fun YouTube stuff out of the way, I want to say hello to everybody on my panel real quickly. Jack, how are you doing?
Oh, I'm doing just Jim Dandy. Yeah, I'm doing okay. Just busy, just busy with, 14,000 different things. Hopefully got some open records headed our way, that new stuff that's old, but it's still new to us. So hopefully we'll have that soon.
All right, cool.
Yep,
Sounds
absolutely.
Great.
Yep.
All right, thank you, Jack. Alice, how are you doing today?
Hi, Rhonda. Yeah, doing okay, thanks. Hello, everyone in chat from soggy, wet Scotland. And I'm glad you're kind of going back to the beginning in a sense, just for new people that's come in. I think that's a good idea, just to do like a wee refresher sort of thing. So looking forward to what we're doing.
All right, thank you very much, and thank you for being here to support us. We really appreciate all of your help and all of your support, and I know Daniel does as well. He especially loves your accent.
Yeah, Case told me that before, that he's managed to hear my voice somehow, and he likes my accent, so I'm happy with that.
Yeah. That's true. All right, thank you, Alice. Susan, how are you doing tonight?
Hi, Rhonda. I'm doing good. Hi, everybody in chat and lurking and panel and all of you guys.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi, thank you for being here, Susan. I know that
Yeah.
you are also really excited for a break tonight. Jack, all of you, you're all ready for a break from reading. So,
Well, I do think this was a great idea, Rhonda. I've seen at least one person that said they were excited because they didn't know anything about the case, and
yeah,
so that's great to do a refresher.
yeah. You want to read that comment, Susan?
Oh, is that fire? Yeah, I'd like to know more about the case. I'm not sure if he's guilty or not. I know nothing about it, only what charges he was convicted of, etc. Yeah, it's a
Well,
good place
good.
to learn here. Yeah.
Yeah, but I'm glad that you are checking it out. I will tell you, Zephyr, and anybody else who doesn't already know, I do have a very biased opinion, um, based on years of research and investigating, and I do have a very biased opinion. So I don't expect anybody else to just fall in line with my opinion or my belief or my conviction, uh, but to learn from the beginning to get facts and information that truly are in this case. I believe that this is, like Susan said, the right place to be, because we're not going to sugarcoat anything. We just tell what we see from documents that we've read, and
Judge
that's
for
pretty much it.
yourself. Yeah,
Yeah,
judge for yourself.
please,
You look at everything.
please, Zephyr, Sheila, anybody else, uh, whether you have an idea of how you feel or not, please listen to what we're presenting. And, as we do new content, we put it in each accuser's room in the Discord. And I think one of the mods can probably link the Discord channel for you as well. And so that even after we finish the show, whether it's reading transcripts or police reports or other documents or whatever, you can go to Discord and read the document for yourself in your own time, in your own way, make your own notes, and all that stuff. So yes, like Susan said, please judge for yourself. Please come to a conclusion for yourself. Don't just take what I believe, and go with that.
And in addition, if I could add, Rhonda and everyone, I think we would be remiss if we didn't also suggest the watching of Daniel in the Den by Michelle Malkin on YouTube. Definitely need to watch that.
Yes.
And Brian Bates' podcast, listen to him as you have time. I mean, you're not going to, there's many, many episodes that he did, but Brian Bates was the investigator for Scott Adams, right? Did I say that right?
Yes.
Yeah. So, and he did a ton of really good investigating, defense investigations behind the scenes. And without that, the case, you just probably going to believe whatever comes out of the state's mouth. And it's not, a lot of it's just misleading with what they did. And they tricked it. I mean, in my opinion, they pull a big fast one, in my opinion.
And also within Brian Bates' first few podcasts, he plays the full 2-hour interview of Daniel Holtzclaw when the detectives brought him in. And then in a subsequent episode, he kind of goes over that and tears it apart a little bit. So yeah, that podcast is called Bates Investigates, and you can get it anywhere you get your podcasts.
That's right. I don't want to pass up Cherie. Cherie, how are you doing tonight? I'm so glad you're able to be here on the panel with us.
Hello, I'm doing well, and welcome everybody to Daniel Holtzclaw for Beginners.
Yes, there you go. Yep, absolutely. And Kay, how are you doing this evening?
Oh, I'm good. I'm a little bit crazy, kind of like Jack, going in a bunch of different directions. Talked to Daniel today and so many things are screwed up at the prison right now, systems and stuff, that it's
Oh no.
frustrating not only to the inmates but the staff as well. Anyway,
That sucks. I'm
annoying,
sorry.
annoying. But yeah, he's had some in-person visits, and he's gonna have some more in-person visits, so that's nice. He's looking forward to them.
That's good.
Yeah.
While we're on that subject, a couple of things to kind of follow up with Kay. Also, to those of you who are new, many of us on the panel have contact with Daniel. For myself, I have not yet set up any sort. Well, there's not room for me on the list yet for phone conversations, but I do write to Daniel, and I know others on the panel have. And Kay speaks with Daniel on the phone quite frequently, or as often as he can, and she often gives updates from Daniel, about things like she just did, things that are going on, or things he's excited about, things he's annoyed about, just that kind of stuff. So you can get updates too directly from Daniel through Kay, which is really pretty nice if I do say so myself. There is an address. I'm kind of gearing this towards folks who really haven't listened to any of my shows until now. So I'm just kind of introducing you to some things. There is a Discord. It's called Daniel's Truth, and it's mostly dedicated to Daniel's wrongful conviction. Each accuser has their own room, and I'm slowly but surely getting information into each room as we cover each accuser. There's also a place in there that talks about writing letters to Daniel. There's his address is in there so that you can look in there yourself and get an address to write to Daniel. And the mods will, as we're able to, post some of those things as well in the chat for you. In the video that you watched just before we came on, I did put holtzclawtrial.com on the video, and I put Bates Investigates podcast in there. I listened to it on Podbean, but you can get it wherever, like Kay said, you can get it wherever you get your podcast from. It is really extremely interesting, and if you don't know anything about the case but what you've heard in the media or possibly read, Bates Investigates podcast is the place to start, and then of course supplement with my channel. Hey, Paul, it is great to see you in my chat. Paul Capaldi says, hey everyone, Daniels is such a bizarre case. LE screwing over LE. Exactly. Until you realize it's not bizarre. There's many other examples. Being a good officer does not protect from unscrupulous colleagues. A freaking men, Paul, and thank you for that. Yes, Paul, Eric Jose, for those of you who are familiar with him, he started covering Daniel's case back in 2019, shortly before he passed away. And I also started covering it and met up with Kay, and I built my own YouTube channel from that. And then very, very shortly, after Richard passed away was when I started my YouTube channel. But other than Richard or Eric Jose, no one was covering Daniel's case, or no one was covering it with truth and facts, is what I should say. I am not Eric Jose. I know that. I don't have the experience that he did, but I am doing everything that I possibly can to carry on what he was unable to finish. So again, I know that I can't hold a candle to him and his experience, but I still I still feel like I have to do what I can. And I learn every single day. I learn new things about the case, and I learn new things from everybody on the panel and from people in the chat as well. So thank you to all of you. That's my little PSA. So I don't, oh, before I move on and we start talking about this first accuser, we're not going to cover her in depth, but we are going to introduce her. But before I move on to that, I just had a thought in the middle of the night last night. Pardon me while I take a drink. I'm sorry. I do my best thinking in the middle of the night when I should be sleeping. And I woke up at about 3 o'clock this morning with this idea that I want to send a card to Daniel right before Christmas. And all I want it to have on it, it's a card that I will just make, are pictures of supporters. You can use your icon, you know, what your avatar that you use on YouTube, or your screen name picture, whatever. And you can use your screen name. You know, Inexplicable Susan, or I don't recall, if you don't want to use your real name. Or you can use your real name. But I would just like permission from people who are willing to do that to just send me a real life picture of yourself, which would be fabulous as well, and your name. And I'm just going to make a collage of as many supporters of Daniel's as I can with our names, with the names, just so he can look at it and put a face or an avatar to a name and see, you know, just some of the supporters that he has out here. And I'd like to get that sent. It would have to be sent by no later probably than the 19th or 20th of December. So if you would love to help be a part of that, just get me your picture, avatar, name in an email to myself or in Discord, or however you choose to do it. And I'll start putting together a collage card to wish Daniel happy holidays. Daniel was convicted on his birthday, which absolutely sucks. So I try to make Christmas, you know, my Christmas greeting a little more pleasant and cheerful for Daniel. And I just think it would be a lot of fun for him to see names and pictures of his supporters. So if you're willing to want to be a part of that, just, you know, let us know in Discord and we'll take care of it. Okay, I see the mods are dropping lots of links in here. Thank you guys so much. I really appreciate it. Yeah, you guys are doing great with the links. So if you guys want to get more information, just check out these links that that the mods are dropping into the chat. And thank you guys for doing that.
Yeah, sorry, Rhonda, the Brian Bates one that I've done, I went through Spotify because I know a lot of people use Spotify, but it doesn't necessarily have to be Spotify, because I'm sure when I listened to it the first time, I listened to it on Podbean or something like that it was called. So
I can drop it. I can drop another link, Alice. Go ahead. I'm sorry. I just wanted to.
Yeah, I think, but I think you can get it on anywhere that you get your podcasts from. You know, if you just put in, if none of our links work, if you just put in Brian Bates Investigates, it should come up wherever you listen to your podcasts. But those links should work as well.
Bates Investigates.
Bates Investigates is the name, not Brian.
Yeah.
I mean, that would probably pop up in a search on the internet, but
here, I got it for you.
Podcasts, yeah, the proper is Bates Investigates, even though it does say the title. Did they change the title, Alice?
It's Bates Investigates Podcast.
Well, look how it's listed there.
On Podbean?
Okay.
Oh, I was
I'm down around. I'm
no,
off
it
the
says,
tracks here. Never mind.
yeah, no, it says Bates
Jeez,
investigates, and
we can do this for 30 minutes.
Yeah.
I put in his full name in Spotify. I put in Brian Bates investigates, and it brought me up the Bates investigates. So that's what I posted.
Okay. It's okay. It's really easy. Google is whatever you might think of Google. I just did Bates Investigates podcast, and it gives you a little choice of places you can go. So yes. So I'm just kind of highlighting some of the comments that I've seen go by. If I see all the comments in StreamYard that come in from foul play. So if you see the same thing twice, it's just because I'm hitting it from foul play and from my chat as well. Again, if you haven't subscribed to my channel, one of the mods, I'm sure, will put my link into the channel as well. And
no, Rhonda, we're going to put everybody else's link in, and we're not even going to put yours in. No chance.
Oh, you're so funny. I'm also going to get with Jack after the new year, and we're going to plan. He's offered many, many times to do an open mic for Daniel's case, one that's a little more organized and put together than the first one I attempted to do, which didn't go very well, in my opinion. So I was quite disappointed with how I
We can do we can do better. We're smarter now.
And we know more and
That's
have more
right.
information, and
Yep.
absolutely can do much better.
Yep.
And we'll wait till we get over some other things that are going on right now in open mic. So like I said, sometime after the new year, we'll get together and plan that for an open mic on Daniel's case in foul play. So, okay. I'm going to show some slides that we've had for a long time. Kay has worked for a couple of years now on this incredible timeline for Daniel's case, but not just from June 18th to present, but from things that were going on prior to when everything started to heat up and everything took place. We don't have that published yet. We will eventually have that published so that everyone can look at that on their own and really dissect it and take it in. But tonight what we're going to do is we're going to cover about 18, maybe 17 or 18 slides, just to introduce you to Janie Ligon's case. There is, and we'll discuss it at a later time, but there is another accuser who we kind of can put before the Janie Ligon's accusation on June 18th, and we will do that at another time. But for now, we are going to start with just discuss Janie Ligon's case. Anybody on the panel have any more comments that you would like to make? Okay. Any questions or comments from the chat that we haven't talked about yet?
I think we should get on with it.
Let's do it. Okay, so, and like I said, panel, if any of you want to read, you can. Otherwise, I will just read. So on June 18th, 2014, at about 2 a.m., Officer Holtzclaw's shift ends. He leaves the Spring Lake briefing station. As he approaches 50th Street, he turns off his onboard computer, as he does after every shift. Janie Ligon, who he received a guilty verdict on, made her allegation on June 18th of 2014. The date that the alleged assault occurred was actually June 18th, 2014. Janie Liggins' SANE kit from June 18th, 2014 at 4 a.m. Was taken at the hospital. Janie Liggins alleges oral sodomy at around 2 a.m. So when they went to the hospital, they did the SANE kit, which is a sexual assault nurse examination. And they didn't do the full kit on her because that also entails vaginal and anal swabs and examinations as well. She didn't allege anything like that. She only alleged oral sodomy. So they did an oral rinse on her mouth and other swabs on clothing and whatnot.
Yeah, 10-second blowjob. You don't need the whole. You don't need the whole kit when you just are alleging a 10-second blowjob.
Yeah. Also, before we go any further, for those of you who have never listened to our podcast, either on Foul Play or my channel, we're not shy about the way we speak and the language we use. So if it's offensive to you, I apologize up front, but we are who we are. So just put that out there. Thank you, Kay. Yeah, you guys on the panel, jump in anytime, that you have a comment. So on June 18, 2014, in the afternoon, around 2 o'clock in the morning, as he approached 50th and Lincoln, he noticed a car that swerved just a bit. He pulled over Janie Liggins. He searched her with the back of his hand and placed her in the back of his patrol car while he searched her car. He let her go. He said, although I knew she had been drinking, I didn't feel she was over the legal limit. Holtzclaw pulled away from the traffic stop at about 2:17 a.m. and drove home. When he got home, he attempted to have sex with his girlfriend, who had used a sleeping aid on that night and on many nights. So he attempted to have sex with her. She was too tired, so he was just like, F it, and went to sleep, went to bed. Janie Liggins says she went home and told her daughter what happened at the traffic stop, her version of what happened. They say they tried to call and go to the Spring Lake station, but the doors were locked. Finally, they see some officers in a parking lot and stop to report the assault at about 3:40 a.m. Officers who were involved at that particular place at 3:23 a.m., Officer Anthony Carter. At 3:40 a.m., Officers Wegner and Booth. At 3:50 a.m., Lieutenant Gullikers instructs Wegner and Booth to take Liggins to Southwest Medical Center. At 4:06 a.m., Gullikers contacts sex crimes detective Kim Davis. 4:22 a.m., Gullikers notifies Captain Ron Basie and is told to contact Lieutenant Tim Musney, who was the lieutenant in the sex crimes unit. At 4:25 a.m., Lieutenant Musney meets Lieutenant Brian Taylor and Officer Wegner at 50th and Lincoln. I need to say here that Lieutenant Brian Taylor is the son of Elaine Taylor, who was the Oklahoma City crime lab analyst who, what's the word I'm looking for, guys? She did the testing on the uniform pants.
Analyzed,
thank you. Analyzed the uniform pants that Daniel had been wearing on June 18th. So Brian Taylor is her son. What's even more concerning is that Rocky Gregory, Detective Rocky Gregory, who's also a sex crime detective, who is also a part of this case, is Elaine Taylor's, or was Elaine Taylor's son-in-law and Brian Taylor's brother-in-law. Rocky Gregory was married to Elaine Taylor's daughter, Teresa. I just wanted to throw that in there while we were on it. At 4:39 a.m., Lieutenant Musney tells Gullikers that he is taking over. Detective Rocky Gregory says he typed the report from Terry Morris, who we'll cover at a later date, from a June 3rd, 2014 interview on the morning of June 18th because, quote unquote, it was quiet in the office. And as you learn more about this case, that will actually make more sense to you. Officer Daniel Holtzclaw reported for lineup at 4 p.m. on June 18th, 2014. Little did he know that he would be stripped of his career that afternoon. He will later be accused of assaulting 3 women during and after this particular shift that actually goes, he starts his shift at 4 o'clock in the afternoon on one day, so on June 17th. By the time his shift ends, it's 2 a.m. the following morning. This particular shift was June 18th at 2 a.m. So later, much later into the investigation, I use the word loosely, he will be accused of assaulting 3 women during and after the June 17th, 18th shift. Officer Holtzclaw reports to lineup at 4 p.m. When second shift is asked if anyone pulled someone over on 50th and Lincoln, he immediately tells them about his after-hours stop. He's taken to Captain Clifton's office, where he agrees to be photographed. Holtzclaw agrees to go downtown with detectives Rocky Gregory and Kim Davis, where he fully cooperates in a 2-hour-long, ridiculous, inappropriate, awful, read technique filled interview. He agreed to a polygraph, responded yes when asked if he wanted to see the video they claimed to have from the assault, because they claim this video hands down shows him exposing himself and forcing Liggins to put his penis in her mouth. Didn't happen. It doesn't show that at all. He allowed them to collect his DNA, and he is immediately stripped of his gun, badge, uniform, pants, and belt, and placed on paid administrative leave, and he is given a ride home. At the interrogation, Holtzclaw pants, belt are taken as evidence. If you watch that video, which you can do at Holtzclaw Trial on YouTube, or Bates Investigates on YouTube, I think it's in both of those. You can find it on YouTube. You can watch the entire unredacted video, and you can see at the end of the video when Rocky Gregory takes his uniform pants, how he just takes a brown paper sack, shakes it open, puts his hand in to open up the bottom of it and everything, and he does this without wearing any gloves at all, which a lot of people, myself included, feel like I can't say it's a violation, but it's very poor practice when evidence.
Yeah, well, it is a violation, Rhonda, because he's just contaminated any evidence by doing that. We know about touch DNA and everything like that. What's to say none of that DNA came off of him?
Right. Oh, yeah. And that's something that, has never been allowed, as far as I know, is a DNA sample from Rocky Gregory. So, but, one should be obtained, but that hasn't been done. So, thank you, Alice.
Is someone eating Cheetos?
I am not eating anything.
No one's eating Cheetos?
No, ma'am. I'm muted.
Are you eating Cheetos?
I think maybe Kay's eating some Cheetos.
No, I'm not.
Oh,
I was muted.
Oh, not me. No Cheetos. I'm not a fan of Cheetos. Is it my voice? I might be sounding, I don't know, it might be me. But I'm not eating Cheetos. JD's eating toast. There you go. There's the culprit. JD. Okay.
Liam said, sorry, Rhonda. Liam says there's nothing particularly wrong with the read technique when properly applied and used by someone who isn't a crayon muncher.
Oh, Liam. I haven't been able to highlight any comments. I'm reading and not looking at the chat, so I'll try and go back and catch them later. JD, I'm eating toast. That's funny. Okay, so the pants and the belt are collected as evidence with an ungloved hand in a paper sack that they're going to be placed in. Holtzclaw denied sexually assaulting Janie Liggins and Terry Morris, who, like I said, is going to come in at a later time, but really is, and Kay is extremely good at explaining this. Even though Terry Morris doesn't start out on June 18th being a alleged accuser, it ties in very much so with Janie Liggins' accusation or report, and I will absolutely leave Kay to cover that when that time comes, because she's the best at it. But Holtzclaw, because it says that he denied assaulting Janie Liggins and Terry Morris, because in that interrogation video, Rocky Gregory brings up Terry Morris and asks Daniel if he remembers having any contact with her. That, like I said, that's all going to make sense when it comes into context. Detectives lied and claimed that pubic hairs have been found by CSI in his patrol car. Holtzclaw said those pubic hairs could not be his, and he did not pull his penis out. He said he has never had his penis out while working, and he has never had sex in the backseat of his patrol car. Detectives lied and said, quote, "We can watch a whole lot of actions being performed on the surveillance video of the Janie Liggins stop while you were there," end quote. When asked if he would like to see the video, Holtzclaw says yes. Holtzclaw gave permission for his DNA to be taken, wanted it to be processed quickly to clear his name, and told detectives, go with the same exam and base their conclusions off the DNA testing results, even after Detective Davis explained they can get DNA from skin cells and pre-ejaculate. Daniel was very anxious to take a polygraph and to get all the DNA testing done, and he wanted to see the video, which was never shown to him because nothing was clear. There was nothing to see on the video, although they led him to believe there was. Okay, so that is where we're going to kind of leave that. Like I said, just an introduction to the beginning of the case and the first accuser, Janie Liggins. I would love to answer questions or anybody on the panel to answer questions from anybody in the chat. If you have questions or something that you want to clear up or clarify or, hit us with your best shots.
I think we should discuss Janie Liggins and her possible motivations behind what she did and the motivations behind law enforcement and what they did. And I think maybe Kay is the best at explaining that.
Yeah, I agree. Okay.
No,
So
pressure. No pressure to perform, Kay. Don't worry about it. It's
no,
fine.
no, I mean, so Rhonda, put that. Oh my gosh, my dog's being ridiculous. Can you guys chat amongst yourself for 30 seconds while I go pin him?
No, we're not really able to talk that much by ourselves. We're kind of shy. Yeah, great suggestion, Susan. Because
Yeah, because I
that
mean that's the whole start of the case, and
exactly,
people wonder, you know, what would be her motive? Why would she do such a thing? And why would law enforcement do such a thing? And there is a lot behind both of those.
exactly.
That's true.
And
That was my biggest hurdle to get over in the beginning is why, and what, Kay explains is a good
Me
explanation.
too, Cherie. That was my biggest hurdle also, Janie Liggins.
yeah, right.
So
The only reason that why she did it is very confusing. Of course, it doesn't make sense to me. But the fact that she that there was absolutely zero DNA returned from Daniel Holtzclaw returned in her same exam, or fingerprints on his car, which she claimed would be there. No DNA from her in the back seat of his patrol car, even though she was there. That why she made the accusation is definitely kind of weird, and why would she do that? But the fact that all the DNA evidence came back negative regarding her accusation, I had no choice but to believe, of course. Yes, there are a couple of interviews, Robina, from a couple of different jurors. One of the names is Ron Hill. He was kind of cocky and arrogant and kind of a tough guy. And the other one, his name is Daniel Speaks. We'll talk about those guys too, or the jurors, or at least Daniel Speaks at some point as well. He was in a sad situation while he was serving on the jury, but they did do interviews with the media. I cannot put my hands on those interviews clips right now because those aren't something that I search very often. So one
I'm
of
back.
them, okay. Let me answer this question really quick
go
from Robina. Am I saying your name correctly? Is it Robina or Robina? No, it doesn't matter. You can't respond verbally. I just wondered why they voted guilty. So Daniel Speaks said that basically it was the DNA that convinced the jurors that he was guilty. And that is incredibly problematic. I know that some of the mods have been posting Dr. Silkman's video DNA presentation that he did on my channel. I think it was last year sometime. And he breaks down the DNA in the case very, very well. And for the first time, it made sense to me and I understood it. So maybe if one of the mods could drop the standalone presentation once again, just so it's easy to find.
Not to mention that Giger lied to the jury about the DNA.
Yes.
That was the biggest thing.
Yeah, and he lied.
Saying that it was vaginal DNA when that just wasn't true. There was no test done to say that it was vaginal, and it was a tiny, tiny, tiny amount.
Yes. And not
Like
only that,
cancer.
but he lied about it in the rebuttal to Scott Adams' closing argument.
Yeah.
And the defense
One of
doesn't
the
get
last
it.
things they
Go back.
heard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's
And
what the
both of,
jurors said. Go ahead.
yeah, that's what I was going to say. What you just said. That's what the both of the jurors that spoke out said was, you know, that, hey, I'm not, one of them said something like, hey, I'm not a scientist or a DNA expert. They said it was vaginal fluid from the, you know, from the victim, and so that's what they said it was, so we believed that. How much did DNA play in your decision? Well, I think or what was the biggest, I think is what she asked. What was the biggest thing for you to find him guilty? The DNA. Which is odd because the DNA, I mean, you had two accusers that had anything that got sent to the lab. One was Janie Liggins. Well, I mean, except they took everyone's buccal swabs. But I mean, as far as saying, oh, hey, this is going to be evidence. You know, Janie Liggins goes and has the same test done. And just to back up, why do I think she did that? I suspect, and I don't know, this is just my opinion. I think she went home, told her daughter that she got pulled over. You know, he patted her down. I think her daughter was pissed because of everything that was going on around the country. You know, the Black Lives Matter stuff, and had fired up after the whole thing down in Florida when Zimmerman was acquitted of the Trayvon Martin down there. I just think, I mean, I think her daughter probably had a lot to do with it. I think that's another reason why it took them so long to actually report. I mean, because they have a relative who is a police officer. So they call that police officer's mother and tell her a story, which is a different version of a story about what happened that night than Janie Liggins even tells in her report. So there's the first discrepancy going on. And they
She was
say
also very scared. You know,
Mhm.
Janie thought he was going to shoot her.
Yeah.
She kept asking him, are you going to shoot me?
Yeah, she did ask that because, you know, stuff like that was going on around the country. You know, and she probably told her daughter that too. I thought he was going to shoot me. He was a really big guy. He was scary. I was scared. I was alone out there at night with him. I don't know. Maybe that's part of her story that's true, is that she was scared. But I think her daughter influenced the false allegations. You know, they don't call 911 to have an officer come out and take the report like the police officer advised his mom to tell them to do. They don't do that. They get into the car. There are more discrepancies between Janie's testimony, her daughter's testimony, Janie's boyfriend's testimony, Marissa's, the daughter's boyfriend's statement about who did what that evening when Janie came in, who was where, who was awake, who was asleep. When they took off to go try to report it, who all went, where did they go? I mean, all that stuff is all scrambled up when you start reading statements from the different people that were there. I mean, so there are so many discrepancies early on that should have been heeded by the detectives, but I mean, they seemingly right away, someone made a decision that Daniel was going down for this, that's how it was going to be handled. He
I think
didn't
it was
call it in.
also, sorry, Kay, I just
No,
want
go
to
ahead.
reiterate, I think it was also a really big deal that Janie had claimed that Daniel had his hands on top of the car and that she had her hands.
Right.
Was it?
Yet again, more evidence that, the discrepancies that the detectives should have seen later. I mean, before they piled on all these victims, when they got back the lab results and there was none of Daniel's DNA in or around Ligon's mouth. Her handprints weren't on the car where she said he made her put them. His handprints weren't on the car where she said he put them. So basically, everything that Janie Liggins said was basically what Daniel said happened too, except for inserting the allegations of sexual assault into the middle of a true story. And so, what they had to look at was what Liggins was saying and trying to test what she said against Daniel's story. And they just ignored the signs that everything that was exculpatory to Daniel that didn't hold any value to these detectives at all. They could have been saying, hey, look, there are no handprints, hers or his. Hey, she's at the hospital around 2 hours after the alleged assault. None of his DNA in her mouth, on her mouth. Then later to find out, he gets accused of raping 2 other women and like
Earlier in that shift, in that same shift.
earlier. Yeah, so truly they should have found more than just Janie Liggins' DNA in her own mouth, because if what she says is true, whatever touched Daniel's penis, whoever had the opportunity to leave DNA on him, that would have been there, and that should have transferred to Janie Liggins' mouth. Anyway, exculpatory things they just didn't look at. So I don't know. I mean, and why would Oklahoma City police want to frame one of their own people? That's always been the biggest question. And it was the hardest one for me to figure out. Because I was trying to wrap my mind around this case, which is so convoluted. I wasn't looking backwards to see, hey, and then I realized, let's look back and see, what is it that they're afraid of with Daniel Holtzclaw? If this gets to the media, if Janie Liggins goes to the media, which she did without telling the police a few days later.
And I think it needs to be said that I believe she did that against their advice as well. They asked, don't go to the media, don't give any interviews, give us a chance to investigate this. And she said, well, I think she was heavily influenced by her daughter and the Black Lives, the BLM movement. I really do. But even after they advised her and told her, let us investigate, before you start doing interviews, or speaking to the media. 4 days later, Janie Liggins was at the local news station giving an interview in shadow about this. At that point, this is my own opinion. At that point, the detectives are like, well, fuck, now we've got to do something, because now we have what appears to be, even though it's not the case, a white cop assaulting a black female. BLM is already getting started, and the local chapter, organized by Grace Franklin, is already in force, is already working. And Oklahoma City is a brand new city. It's, the whole, Kay would explain the MAPS project much better, but Oklahoma City had transformed from its old rundown, cowboy looking days to, what was becoming a beautiful city, with lots of community areas to gather in and to, shop in. It was, so imagine a black woman goes to the media and is backed by BLM and says that a white police officer sexually assaulted her. I would imagine that the detectives and the lieutenants and the sex crimes, everybody are going, holy shit, we gotta get in front of this.
Yeah. I want to back up just a tick, because I mean, that's a good point you made about MAPS, and I was coming up on that. But what I thought about when I was trying to figure out the why part of it is, okay, they're going to look at Daniel. Let's hear about Daniel's history as a cop, because we know that he was barely even off of his probationary period for being a new hire before he was assigned to a stint on the gang unit, which is kind of unheard of for a brand new cop to land a gig like that. And he was really excited about it. And I mean, for those of you who haven't seen a photo of Daniel's physique, he is he is just a huge presence. He's a great big guy. He's a bodybuilder. He was dedicated to it. He was a football player his whole life. He's always been about building his body strong and fitness. He was training to compete in some lifting competitions, so he was super muscled up. They give him a hard time about steroids, but he never took steroids like some bodybuilders do, because unlike a lot of bodybuilders, he played football at a high level his whole life.
Yeah, that's exactly it, Kate. And I'm talking from experience, because I was a bodybuilder as well. And to get the physique that Daniel has got, if you work at it and you take your proteins and your vitamins, and you live on chicken and raw eggs, and because I can see Daniel in the kitchen breaking some eggs into a glass and drinking the eggs and things like that, because my dad and that used to do it, and they used to go to bodybuilding competitions and they never used steroids. They just worked, they were at the gym 5-6 days a week for hours on end. If you're prepared to put in hard work, then you can get the build that Daniel had, no problem, without steroids.
Yeah,
and we used to call that cheating, because that's cheating in my eyes as a bodybuilder. If you're going to do something like that, you do it properly and you work hard and you build your body up yourself. You don't need to cheat by taking steroids.
And he wasn't accustomed to doing that anyway, because, he couldn't take steroids playing in a college on a full ride scholarship. they're getting tested all the time.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
you'll lose your whole full ride education
yeah. They would lose it
tuition.
all. I mean, surely if he got tested positive for steroids in the police force as well, that he would get reprimanded for that. I mean,
I don't
it's
think they tested him in the. I don't think he. Are you saying if he would have been tested in the police force?
yeah,
I
and the
don't think they
steroids
did
showed
that.
up. No,
Yeah.
no, I don't believe Daniel would take steroids. But what I'm saying is if he was on steroids, surely they get drug tested at the police station and that, random
I
drug tests
actually
and stuff
don't
like
think
that.
they do, Alice. I
Oh
don't think
no?
they
All
test him
right,
for.
all right.
But he had been. I mean, he was a huge guy coming off of his fourth year playing up in Michigan,
Yeah,
and he continued to bodybuild, so he was way ahead of other people without steroids, and
yeah,
just in the habit of that wasn't a mindset for him. But anyway,
yeah.
not to get too far down the steroids trail. I think what I was saying about the steroids is that maybe because he was a big guy, um, that's why they wanted him in gang, because he wasn't afraid to get in the mix, we know. And as a consequence of patrolling areas where there's a lot of drug activity and gang activity, and then also being actually in the gang unit dealing with certain specific assignments that dealt with gangs and gang areas, you're going to come into contact with people who aren't just going to put their hands behind their back when it's time for them to be arrested. And as a consequence of that, you're going to get, whether it's, and you're supposed to self report all of your use of force allegations or incidents. That's what the policy book says. You call a supervisor when you've had to use of force. Well, Daniel was doing that, and he had quite a few use of force. Um, I mean, I say allegations, but incidents, reports, excuse me, which he, was investigated and cleared on based on the circumstances of how they happened. But that's not going to look good to a public who is going to scrutinize him over this after hours traffic stop, because it didn't look good that he had turned his computer off. People don't want to hear, oh, that was his habit, he did it all the time. But at trial, it was proven by the defense that that was exactly true. That was his routine, it was his habit. Was it against policy? It was against like a 2-month-old policy, I think, if I'm remembering the memo date correctly, that
Yes.
you should leave your computer on if you have a take-home car the whole time that you're in it. So, from door to door, you don't turn it off on the way home, and you turn it on the way to work instead of wait until you get there. But he was used to doing this thing he did where he would shut it down on his way home, and already starting the process of unwinding, and he pulled her over, and that does not look good. But her
It's not
the
unheard of, though,
evidence
for
yeah, the evidence doesn't match her story. And it does match his story. So why did they not believe him? I think they were terrified that the public was going to be
Okay,
outraged, that people were going to come to Oklahoma City and protest, that there might be riots in Oklahoma City, which has been through, like Rhonda said, a huge rejuvenation through the MAPS projects. And I think they decided right away quickly to sacrifice him. Go ahead,
yeah,
Alice.
Okay, I don't know if I've asked this question before, but how long did it take Daniel to go from the police station to his house? If you know,
I think like about 20 minutes.
about 20 minutes, right? So, in my opinion, then that explains why he would start switching down the computer in the car. If it only takes him 20 minutes to get home, he's no one to sit out in the car in the driveway for the next 5-10 minutes when he gets home to shut down the computer. So he's doing it on the way home, so that when he gets to the driveway, it's just a case of getting out the motor, locking it up, and getting in the house, getting changed, going for a shower, going to the gym, or whatever it was that he did. So
I would also
mean,
think that he wouldn't have to take any calls that might come
yeah,
in.
exactly, Susan. Yeah. So I don't see any nefariousness in him switching off the computer.
Yeah, but he was stupid to not turn it back on and call her in, or at least radio her in.
Yeah,
He could have called her in on his cell phone and placed himself out with her. I mean, and I don't know if he was thinking about not wanting to turn his computer back on, just figuring this out. But, I think, and Daniel agrees that, when these things, just investigating things, and you are taking control of people when you investigate a situation. I think it does. I mean, you are in power, you are in control of that situation. You are handling it. And I think in retrospect, Daniel sees that there were things like not following this policy, things that he thought, oh, that's no big deal, that, he described that sort of thing of his thinking as not, he doesn't have a big ego, but that was kind of something that, his ego probably needed to be checked on that, because he did need to be following those rules. Those were in place to keep him safe. Not that they didn't go ahead and continue to use his own police records against him to pile on all the rest of the accusers, because they absolutely did. So it's not like that was exactly going to keep him safe if he would have called her in. But it was the first thing that was going to look real bad and be hard to explain, because it sounds terrible. After
Then
hours traffic stop.
I'll just say that Daniel had no idea there was a single black woman in that car when he pulled it over.
No, he couldn't have known.
The windows
he
were
could
tinted,
not have known.
Were heavily tinted, actually.
Yeah. He just saw her swerve in front of him and thought that she might be a drunk driver.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And he addresses that quite well in his interrogation video. He addresses that, and I just want to back up just a little bit to the bodybuilding. Rocky Gregory hounds the hell out of him about his supplements and his working out, and well, what supplements do they make you kind of angry? He was trying to imply roid rage, of course. Daniel said that he would not risk, when he was in college, he was not going to risk his full ride scholarship by taking steroids while he was playing college football. So he addressed that pretty well, I felt like, in his interrogation. And I think that needs to be said. And I shared a
Well,
picture of him, so you can kind of get an idea of the freaking muscles on this dude. Man, he's got some guns. So he's
Yeah,
locked and loaded.
yeah, exactly, Rhonda. And the pictures that I seen him, that is hard work. That's nothing to do with steroids or anything like that. That is just sheer hard work and eating properly. That's basically what it is. Yeah, you take some supplements here or there. I mean, it was brewer's yeast and something else when we were doing it, when I was growing up and we were doing it. And like I said, I see my diet and the raw eggs and everything like that. Eating well and working well, working out well in the gym, you can get to Daniel's size without any steroids. But not only that, the ones that are on steroids, you can tell it's a roid body, and Daniel's is not that. He is a bulky guy. So I can totally understand how the gang unit would have wanted him. I really, really do.
Yeah. Yeah. Well.
And then we also have the fact that Blinkwinkle, what's her name?
Kim Davis.
Kim Davis says she did the interview with Janie Liggins. She went to the hospital. And she said she believed her. So she went into Daniel's interview believing Janie Liggins' story before she even heard what Daniel had to say.
Oh, yes. I believed her. I believed her. When Janie told me that, I believed her. I believed something happened to her. What an idiot. Based on what now?
Right.
Now we do this on a gut feeling. That's why we have so many innocent people in prison, because of gut feelings.
It really is.
Stuff.
It really is.
She thought she knew better. See, that's the same thing. That's the same thing with Daniel turning his computer off. He thought that would be okay. She thinks she knows. She thinks she can. They don't have enough training, for one thing, these investigators. That's a huge problem with all these wrongful convictions, too. They're talking about defund the police, which is complete bullshit. What they need to do is require the police to actually pay police officers an amount of money that you can actually get people who are more qualified, you need some real analytical people to solve crimes like this. You can't have some doofus in there that's, I believed her. Something else. She was crying real hard.
People with a moral compass would be another quality I would like.
But even if you were training these imbeciles that they had work in this investigation, even if they would have had some proper training, but the training they get is the bad habits of the senior detectives who, they team up with when they come into the division, and they train them their bad habits. Just like, who did Elaine Taylor, the DNA analyst, work under? Oh, Joyce Gilchrist, Black Magic. Google that, people. Google Black Magic Oklahoma City Crime Lab. See what you find.
There's a lot to find about Gilchrist when you Google her name. I also, you know me, I'm always trying to plug a video, but there's also a couple of videos that we did very early on. Maybe in my second year of just covering Joyce Gilchrist and Elaine Taylor. So if you want to try to find those as well, you can, because here's the thing, it's not, this is a very long systemic problem in Oklahoma City, dating way, way back, many, many years, many DAs ago. And So, it's just a legacy that they seem to carry on, and they seem to be quite proud of it, quite honestly. Robina, this is a great question. Robina says, why didn't they collect his underwear? Exactly. Why didn't they? Well,
yeah, not just his underwear, but why didn't they collect his other uniform pants and any clothes that hadn't been laundered from his house when they took him home?
yeah.
They should have been over there with a search warrant.
Yes.
Or, I mean, they didn't need a search warrant. He told them they could, here, you can have my phone. You can have, they could do anything they wanted to. They could have taken anything they wanted out of his house. They took nothing.
Well, at that point, they had probable cause. So, they could have taken what the reason that they claim in. So Davis and Gregory do an interview with Michelle Malkin. I think it was in 2019. I think they did this interview, and she asked about that. Why didn't you take his underwear? And Rocky said, "Well, he said that he'd washed them."
And Kim says, "Underwear? Why?
Why?
Well,
Don't
you think you'd want to take his underwear?"
Yeah, three women on that shift claim that they were sexually assaulted.
Well, you
they didn't know that at this time, but
you want to hope that he washed his underwear is what Kim's
that's right.
comeback was.
Yeah.
Yeah, you kind of hope he washes his underwear.
And Dr. Silkman said that yes, washing clothing does damage DNA, but there's always a possibility that you can get DNA still from laundered clothes. But the bitch of it is, he hadn't washed them. They were in the washer. Daniel did not say that he washed them, only that they were in the washer.
Washer was kind of like a hamper. It sounds like that's what we used to do.
Where are the underwear? They're in the wash.
Yeah.
And Rocky
says, well, we can't use them. We can't test that then. Sorry. Go ahead, Kay. I'm sorry.
No, I mean, doesn't he say he doesn't say when Daniel says they're in the wash, he doesn't say have they been laundered? Are they?
No,
he doesn't want to ask. Yeah, he doesn't want to ask any more questions to find out, hey, are they wet? Hey, they've been washed and I haven't put them in the dryer yet. Or, hey, I use my washing machine as a laundry hamper. When I undress, I throw my dirty clothes into the...
Eddie does that.
Yeah. Like young bachelor guys.
A lot of young guys.
Wash all their colors, all their stuff in a load.
Sapphire has a great question. Did Daniel use the same squad car all the time? Was there any DNA from any of the women in it or on him? Yes, he did have the same squad car all the time. It was a take-home car, so he would drive it home after his shift. And no, there was no DNA found anywhere on the car or in it.
There was DNA on a door handle in the back. I'm trying to think if that was something they were matching against Janie Liggins.
I'm gonna
have to look at that, but it wasn't. Yeah, it wasn't. They didn't test any of the DNA for saliva or. They just tested it to see whose it might be. So they couldn't say this is or isn't DNA from something of a sexual nature. I mean,
You said they tested it against, do you mean they tested it to see if it was Janie's? But it wasn't?
yeah, don't you remember there being some, the car got processed and they took some swabs of the door, inside of the door, which, I mean, her
Well,
allegation.
we know Janie was in the car, so
Right. That's the
it
thing.
wouldn't
I
be
mean,
nefarious that her DNA was on the door handle.
I think most of these women were in that car.
Right.
Yeah.
I think not all of them, but obviously he was standing outside when he was talking to Sherry Ellis. He was outside the car. He didn't put her in the car. He didn't put her in the car and drive her through the park. They talked on the outside of the car. You can hear that in the radio traffic. They're on the outside of the car. They're outdoors.
Sheila has a great question as well. Didn't he use a black and white for a little bit? He did in the very beginning of his, probably in his rookie year for a short time. And I think there was once, maybe twice, that he used a black and white for, I think, one day because he had had an accident in his new car, in his Ford Interceptor, but not on a regular basis.
He was what, 3 years on the force?
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah.
And none of the black and white use days were during this.
During any assault allegation.
Yeah, none were during any of these allegation time period.
But Rocky definitely tried to make it so. So I believe when he was interviewing let's see, Lieutenant Gregory or whatever at the Spring Lake Station. So
some things came out, and I'm trying to think if it was in Michelle Malkin's interview with Detective Kim Davis and Detective Rocky Gregory. When did the eyes of the department are on you statement come out? That Kim Davis had been told by the brass, the eyes of the department are on you, and that she was told that on the 18th.
I do not, I don't remember that. I know it was said, I know I read it, but I don't remember where. And
it comes to me that it might be, well, it probably is, like when they were having their big meeting and all, they were all there.
Right.
Right before, I think that was before they interviewed him, Daniel, I mean.
Right. So it was a meeting of Deputy Chief Coleman, is that right? Basie,
yes. Wenzel?
Lieutenant
Big
Wenzel. Who's the female that was in charge while the deputy and the chief were out on the West Coast on vacation? Michelle.
I can't remember her last name.
It's not Michelle
Holman, Holden.
Oh.
No.
Michelle started with an H.
I remember Holden, but I don't know if that was it or not.
Dang it, I can't think of her name.
Is she the one that were reported to the first Terry Morris or the second Terry Morris incident?
Wait, is it Wenzel?
Wenzel was, she was the major.
She was in charge while they were on vacation, right?
I believe so.
Okay. Anyway, it was also Kim and Rocky, and who else was in that meeting?
Musney, Basie.
Wasn't there Clifton or something like that?
That would have been Daniel's boss.
Oh.
I think. Jason Clifton, is that right? Anyway, so there's that. Kim Davis who is apparently lead detective at this time because she's been assigned to Janie Liggins. So when they say the eyes of the department are on you to Kim, they haven't. Does Rocky already know, hey, I'm going to question him this afternoon about Terry Morris? Because this is someone who Daniel had stopped, who he had an interaction with. And then several weeks later, after Daniel's interaction with her, she ends up getting the police called on her in a 911 call because she's in her ex-boyfriend's car and she's unhappy that he has a new girlfriend, and she's basically destroying his car. So he calls the cops on her. When she realizes that the cops are coming, she says, "You called the same motherfuckers that raped me?" So did she say that because she truly was raped? Well, not raped. She keeps saying rape, but then her allegations are not rape. They're oral sodomy, right?
Yeah. We're talking, just in case somebody might have missed it, this is now talking about Terry Morris.
This is the accuser that, because at this point, what you have is you don't have any evidence to charge Daniel for a crime against Janie Liggins. What are they going to use as evidence to charge him? Because they have nothing. They have his story, her story, and then they have the negative SANE kit, and they have the negative prints on the car. They don't really have anything else. They have this grainy video that doesn't show anything from a building's exterior security cameras. You can see Daniel's flashlight moving back and forth when you try to match up the video to his story about what he was doing and her story about what was going on. But you can't see, like they told him, a whole lot of actions being performed on this video. That was complete crock of crap, man.
Not to mention the cars passing by as this was supposedly happening on a very small 4-lane road. It's not a
and
wide
you guys,
boulevard. It's a small road. And he's
when
right,
you see
pulled
that,
off on the side. Yeah. It's just
unbelievable.
Unbelievable. Thank you. That's
Well,
the
when
word.
you see the street and you stand there on the corner and try to imagine that happening at that major intersection with lights, it wasn't dark there.
I'm going to show part of this video. I'm not going to show the whole thing. It's about 10, almost 11 minutes long. So I'm not going to show the whole thing, but this will give you, those of you in chat, those of you watching, this will give you a good idea of what this video looks like that they told Daniel in his interview, that they said, we see a whole lot on this video. We see everything on this video, and we think you're lying. I'm paraphrasing. We think you're lying to us because we see it on the video. You want to see the video? And Daniel says, yeah, I want to see the video.
He was glad there was video.
Yeah, he was really glad. So this is what it looks like. So that's the intersection itself, but here's what it looks like. That is the video that they told Daniel. And up in the front, you can see Liggins' car up here. Or not, yeah, that's, no, her car is, it's hard to tell.
No, you were right.
Yeah, this is her car here, and this is Daniel's police squad car over here.
I thought her car was in front of his, no?
It is. It is.
Oh,
I
okay.
might, okay.
Looking the
And then
wrong
the
direction.
squad car is over here. But that's it, you guys. I mean, that's all that can be seen in that video.
See all those actions being performed, people? Look at all those actions being performed.
There's no penis in the video, Sheila Hawkins. Absolutely no penis in the video. So, yeah.
You know, it is crazy. You know, so that's what they have. They have this video that's playing. They have negative SANE kit, negative fingerprints, and they have an officer who turned his computer off, pulled over someone without calling him in, and now you've got this lady who's upset, who's, I mean, she's spinning a tail. You see throughout this whole thing, as the interviews that she did, especially after the trial, she loves her celebrity status of
Yeah.
being
And
the grandma.
Daniel didn't deny the stop at all. I
No.
mean, he told him about it in the interview.
He told him in great detail what he did on that stop.
When Michelle Malkin was interviewing these detectives, Kim Davis said something that I've always thought was so telling. She said, you know, when we have one victim, we don't always get things done. But with 13 and the MO is the same and the verbiage is the same. So that was the mindset, is that, you know, if we pile a bunch of people on here, then we can get a conviction. Because where they're starting out with Janie Liggins with no evidence to even file charges against Daniel, they needed to get busy. And they had to use Terry Morris. They had to get her to change her whole story of how she reported her sexual assault. If she was sexually assaulted, I don't have a hard time believing that she may have been, because she did tell the same story over and over and over, and still, even in her deposition, she wasn't changing. Although at trial, they got her to change the date. But
by a lot,
by 3 weeks of which, and they had to get her to change the location and everything else too, because it needed to match the GPS from Daniel's car on May 8th when he did encounter her at Liberty Station Apartments. Without her, what would have happened?
Yeah. We probably wouldn't know each other.
And it took her it took Rocky Gregory a long time to get her to come on board, because she had already signed a decline to prosecute. I mean, Rocky did investigate the allegations that were made on May, what was it, Cherie?
24th.
He did investigate that, and you know, you can watch her video and decide for yourself what you think, but she's obviously mentally ill. She's obviously has an addiction problem.
And how did he get her to change her mind? Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead, Cherie.
How did he get her to change her story?
Yeah. Finally, when she wouldn't change her story after he brought her back in again after she had signed the decline to prosecute, and put some pretty hard pressure on her, but she still said she didn't want to be involved. Then mysteriously she gets arrested for trespassing, which there's never was a trespassing charge filed against her. It still doesn't exist. You can't find it. They just needed her in the Oklahoma County jail so they could, have something to bargain with, I guess, She was more likely to change her story, and she's very willing in the half-recorded interview that you can hear. It starts recording. Excuse me. It starts recording after they've already gone over this new version of the story that Rocky needs her to tell. Because what they need her to be is the first victim. Janie Liggins can be the second victim because there's no evidence on her. They'll just cram her into the mix. But, once they have get Terry Morris to change her story, and they can use Daniel's own police records against him. And, how would she know the path if he didn't take her there? Oh, I don't know. How would she know? Let's see. That's the only way you guys can think of that she could possibly know. It couldn't be because you guys are crooked cops and you told her, you coached her what you needed her to say. It couldn't be that you guys had a Google map pulled up on Lieutenant Musney's phone. It couldn't have been that, could it have been? I mean, give me a break.
He tries to say Rocky tries to say he didn't get the ABL till July after Terry changed her story, but we have evidence that he knew about it much earlier, like May.
And also if that were true, that they didn't have access to, they hadn't pulled the AVL. AVL is the same thing as GPS, guys. The police computer, what is it called? Automatic vehicle locator.
Yes.
So when the onboard computer is turned on in the officer's car, which Daniel actually didn't realize that the tracking device to the car was in his computer. He thought every car was equipped with a tracking device somewhere. So I don't know how many other officers realized that or not. But that was something that made him feel kind of dumb to not know that. So, turning off his computer, although that seems nefarious, that wouldn't have occurred to him that he was concealing his location when he did that, because he thought the car was equipped. Anyway, I get off track so easily.
Well, I think we all do. It's really hard to explain one thing without actually going back and explaining another thing that goes with it. That's kind of why I wanted to kind of start over, honestly.
I really think the next thing to explain, if people are new, is the list that was made.
Yeah, that's a good point. Cherie?
Do a whole show on the list.
Cherie, do you have an explanation of the list?
Not really. They based it on like Terry Morris that tried to find people or women like her that Daniel had stopped with a criminal history, drug use, prostitution, that sort of thing.
Yeah. Yeah, so usually when you create like a victim profile, it seems like you would create that victim profile based upon the first reporter, which was Janie Liggins. But now that they're trying to switch it around and make it seem like, oh no, Terry Morris was the first accuser. And Janie Liggins didn't really have, I mean, she wasn't homeless. She wasn't on the street. She was, she worked for her son who owns a daycare. I mean, obviously, from looking at her, she smokes a lot of weed. I don't care about that. I mean, a lot of people smoke a lot of weed. It doesn't make you a bad person.
I think she dipped in the wild side a little bit, but she, from what I can see, but not, she wasn't living in it like many of the others had.
Right. I mean, she obviously doesn't mind lying to get out of trouble. That's been very well established. So, not to build her up to be any kind of saint, but she didn't have the same sort of profile that all of the other women who became a part of this case had. And that was because of Lieutenant Musney doing exactly what Cherie just said, creating a victim profile based on Terry Morris. So it's going to be a Black woman who's hasn't issues with homelessness and drugs and crime and prostitution. Something that they could say Daniel had to hold over these women's heads. So they were looking for people who had pending charges, because that ends up being a big theme in this whole case, is that, he told him if they did this, then they wouldn't go to jail. But, if they didn't, then so using his power and their charges against them. But they create this and it ends up only being, well, I think there were a few women on there that weren't Black. Like Adara Gardner's half Black, half white. So she identifies as white sometimes and Black sometimes. She said in her deposition as much. Regina Copeland, what was her? I think these are the only two that weren't.
I think she looked Black, but she had a lot of white features too. I shouldn't say white features, but I don't know how to put it. I think
I think she's mixed race too.
There you go.
But the rest of the women,
she was
and a lot of the
someone
women,
that
Go
she
ahead.
was someone that Daniel had encountered, had
Had contact
stopped,
with.
and
Yeah. Sorry, Susan. I just want to say, I'm trying not to get too off track with Janie Liggins, but every single one of these accusers, Daniel had legitimate contact with them. He had a legitimate stop with them, or everything was legitimate. That it wasn't like he was just out randomly, scoping out somebody that he was going to sexually assault and then, snatching them up and putting them in and the only evidence they have that they use in trial, besides the accuser's words and the detectives embellishing everything that they go up and testify to, the only thing they have that they use, and it's not even circumstantial evidence, is that Daniel's car was in the location where the alleged assault occurred. That's it. And that is tracked by his AVL. And those of you who've been around a while know how freaky I am about the AVL crap.
Can you put up that picture, Rhonda, with all the accusers again? You had that in the beginning.
Yeah, it was on my video. Let me see if I can just pull up that part of the video.
Another thing, well, you're probably going to get to it, was what they said to these ladies when they sought them out.
Yeah. I mean, so we have this list, we have this list that Musney created, and it's all women that Daniel had pulled over because they
all point the finger at one man.
Sorry.
Oh, that's all right. Were you going to play something?
No, I just was going to put the picture up from the video
Oh,
of
okay.
all 13 accusers.
So they're going to, I space out. Oh my God.
That's only
Do, do,
10.
do.
You were talking about what they said to them when they hunted them down.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. So, I mean, these are all women that Daniel had contact with because the whole goal was to use his GPS, his AVL records to prove that he had the women and he took them on these routes. So, but when they would contact these women, usually they didn't actually contact the women themselves first because these are people who aren't just hanging out at their house. So they would go and find like the parents of the women or the boyfriend of the women or family members, and they would say, you know, hey, we have reason to believe that your daughter was sexually assaulted by an Oklahoma City police officer. They're saying things like this. We heard Kim Davis say basically that same thing to Sherry Morris in a recorded call, but they're not recording all of these interactions with people. So we know they're saying things like this to people because it's documented in a few places. But if we had all of the recordings of every interaction they had, it would be so bad for them. Because
he would not
they
have been
gave
convicted.
No, they gave these people's family members the information they needed to get relayed to the women so that when the women finally do get in touch with the detectives, they're not caught off guard about anything. They know why, they know exactly what the police are going to talk to them about. They know the buzzwords, and you hear the buzzwords over and over. You hear things like, oh, why didn't you report? Who are you going to call the cops on the cops? Because it's the cops. Because we're scared. You were scared. You hear the detectives giving them the answers sometimes, like, why didn't you report? And the women pause long enough, and the detectives will say, because you were scared. And they'll say, yeah, I was scared. And then that ends up being their answer.
Did you think you wouldn't be believed? Yeah.
Right. And then they put that shit in their police reports like the women said it when it was prompted by the detective. You've got all kinds of stuff like that. So, I mean, a super flawed investigation.
So just real quick while we're in a brief pause. So here's a picture of 10 of the accusers. And Cherie, the only ones I was sure weren't pictured were Terry Morris and Jamie Liggins, but Carla Raines is also not pictured in this particular photo. So those are all of the accusers with the exception of Carla Raines, Terry Morris, and Jamie Liggins. So
I think,
and who was it? Who was it that said, how'd you get my name on something like this?
That was Carla Raines.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, Carla Raines. She denied anything happened to her over and over and over. And she's just like flabbergasted by it. And she says, well, how'd you get my name on something like this anyway? Because I hadn't been on the street or nothing that much. Yeah. You know, and he got acquitted on all of her
And it
counts.
was,
but
no, nothing like that happened.
No. Yeah. Exactly.
And then all of a sudden, here's a police report with some allegations. It's like, okay, we have a recording that says no, nothing ever happened. We have her on the recording saying, no, I had never had anything like that. You know, there was this officer once who exposed
about a year ago
to me, but he was black, or he was a black officer. And Rocky shuts the recorder off because he's like, he doesn't want to get any more documentation on her being, having an officer expose himself to her. He doesn't want that documented. I'm surprised he didn't just edit the end of his video off. It's not like he ended the interview. He just did really just turn it off.
There's lots of stuff coming in. I am so thrilled to have so many great comments and questions.
Yeah,
I don't
Mark
even know where to start.
McPherson. Mark McPherson, how did the jury overlook all that as blatantly obvious to us? Well,
I think it was too
it has
much.
a lot to do with the DNA and Giger saying that it was her vaginal fluid on Daniel's pants, which was a total lie. I think that's what turned the jury. They only convicted him on half of the accusers.
I think they were scared too, talk about.
Yeah, they've got the protesters outside. They can hear them in the courtroom protesting outside. It's insane.
Yeah, it was pretty intimidating at the courthouse, the scene. At one point, the defense asked, the judge kind of stopped and addressed the defense's concern that they were shouting, "Give him life, give him life." And you could hear that it was interrupting the testimony, where it was disruptive to the jury to focus on who was on the stand.
But the judge admonished the jurors not to pay any attention to it.
Yeah, so that made it all better.
So
curative action.
Yeah. I want to address some stuff in the chat. So Alice says, and some of them in deposition said he never touched me. What the actual fuck? One deposition, and I'll try to find it while everybody's chatting and post the link for you. In one of the depositions by Tabitha Barnes, she claimed that he didn't touch me. She said it 5 times, if I'm not mistaken, when in her initial police report and all of her preliminary and trial testimony, she said that he touched her bare breasts. But then in deposition, she said he didn't touch me. And that was just the one. And then the other one that I'll find the link for, and these are short videos, was Sherry Ellis, and she said she never saw who they accused of raping her until she saw him in court at the trial. It's astounding. It's shocking.
Yeah, thanks, Rhonda. I wasn't sure if it was just one of them that had says that he never touched her, or if it was 2 of them. That's how underneath that comment I put, or should I say one of them at least, because I knew at least one of them had came forward in a deposition and said he never touched her.
He didn't touch me,
which is absolutely disgusting.
Yeah, she said that 10 times or something. I mean, a lot of times.
It was a bunch.
Zellner.
Yeah, it was a bunch.
And Sheila says my amygdala is so hijacked with this case.
But yeah, Mark McPherson, I think your question is great. And to kind of go into it a little more, how did the jury overlook all that is blatantly obvious to us? The jury not only did they not, it's not that they didn't hear things, because they did, but you have to remember that all 13 of these accusers were lumped into one trial. And by the time this entire 5-week trial was over, it was just, in my opinion, so much information overload. And so, yes, to hear at the very end in Galen Giger's lying rebuttal to Scott Adams' closing statement, closing argument, saying to the jury that the DNA was found of a 17-year-old victim from her vaginal wall was found on the inside zipper of his pants. That is one of the very last things the jury heard. And that's what stuck with the jury. And that's what the interviews that we do have the clips of, the jurors giving their interviews, that's what they said. It was the DNA. DNA turned, changed. It was really strong evidence to us. It wasn't fucking evidence, number one, because it was a lie. And even during trial testimony, Elaine Taylor, the crime lab analyst who tested the pants, even said that it wasn't from vaginal fluid because they hadn't tested for that. They couldn't test for that. But Galen Gigger had no problem whatsoever throwing it in anyway in his very last, and we have the closing arguments recorded so that you can listen to those as well. Opening and closing statements are recorded and on the channel.
Rhonda, isn't it true that they didn't find that DNA on the first testing of his pants, but went back later?
No, they found it on the outside of his pants, but I think as the closer that Galen Gigger got to trial, and as he was trying to craft his story that he was going to tell the jury, I think he thought, oh man, this would be so much more salacious if it was on the inside of his pants too. I'd rather say they found it on the inside of his pants. So 15 months after it was tested the first time, the inside of his pants were tested.
Elaine, work a little of your magic, okay? That you learned from
there
Miss
you go.
Gilchrist.
Yeah. What we need you to find is this.
Yeah.
So,
how long did they deliberate? I believe it was 4 or 4.5 days, if I'm not mistaken. And also, it's important to say this is, I mean, he was convicted on December 10th. They'd already pretty much lost their Thanksgiving holiday because they started the trial on November 2nd and went all the way through to the beginning of December. And where they were finally on the 10th, the verdict was announced and given.
Well, we've been reading some of the transcripts, Mark, and if you go back and listen to some of those transcripts, which the document should be in the Discord, Daniel's Truth, there are rooms for each accuser, so the transcripts are in those rooms. But what struck me was, as we were reading them, is how boring Galen Gigger was trying to make some of the parts of the questioning, and how tricky, like how confusing he was trying to make it. He didn't want these jurors to be able to, put this together and in their heads. He didn't want them to be able to analyze accuser to accuser or even be able to get a cohesive timeline in their head. It was all about emotion and him just being completely sensational with his case. He's so ridiculous.
Well, sorry, Kate. Also, if you go back and listen to some of the transcripts that we've read, you will find that particularly with some of the less coherent accusers, when they're testifying, he testifies for them. And you'll often hear me, objection, Your Honor, testifying for the witness, or,
Oh, I think we all did that, Rhonda. I mean,
I know. And you just did Jack, Scott Adams.
Trial.
They're just
some of them.
What's that?
Their stories change from the pre-trial.
Yes.
To the trial.
To the trial.
Some of them.
Yeah.
Well, I mean,
From police report to pretrial to trial. Right.
Yes.
Exactly.
True.
To
True.
deposition.
All the
To
way
deposition.
through. Oh my. To deposition. Yeah.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
hopefully, just saying that deposition, hopefully, as we begin to cover the cases again, starting with JD, hopefully I can get permission to get some interesting and informative telling clips from depositions that we can share. I can't do much. I can't share much. I don't know much. But whatever permission I can get, I will make clips of depositions, so that you guys can see the changes as well. Mark McPherson says this was coordinated from top to bottom and beginning to end. I believe so 100%.
The only thing I think would have happened differently is if they could have gotten a Dara Gardner who ended up being the match to the DNA. She, they weren't able to interview her until, was it September?
October. Mm-hmm.
If they had gotten a hold of her, when they had 5 or 6 accusers and then they found her, there would have been half as many accusers.
That's right.
Yeah, they were searching for her DNA. Yeah.
Yeah, the emails reflect the emails that I think Michelle Malkin got a lot of the emails, but they reflect that these officers were being told, find more victims, because they hadn't found the match to the DNA yet. Get out there and find more victims. They had to find the person who matched the DNA. And instead of being smart enough to say, hey, let's go from the people that he had the most recent contact with and go backwards, they were too dumb to use that tactic. And so they end up not getting a hold of Adara until months later.
Literally just before they were getting ready to go to trial, honestly. We've talked about these 2 videos. I'm pretty proud of them. Not to mention the information within them is extremely important. And so for those of you who have not seen these are clips that were made from depositions that were taken when they were preparing for the civil suit against Daniel. So if it's okay with everybody, I'm going to go ahead and play this. First one's 2.5 minutes long, and it's Tabitha Barnes.
How many times did Holtzclaw touch you inappropriately?
He didn't touch me.
He never touched you?
No.
Next to the third to the last line says, Holtzclaw then asked Plaintiff Barnes if there was anything under her breast and fondled Plaintiff Barnes's naked breast. Do you see that?
You just read it. Yes, I see it, sir.
Isn't that different than what you testified today?
What do you mean is that different?
Didn't you say Holtzclaw didn't touch you?
He didn't touch me.
So this is a mistake.
He did not touch me.
Okay, and if you go back to Defendant's Exhibit number 11, which is the information, count 1.
Go ahead.
5 lines from the bottom of count 1, directing TB to expose her breast and then touching her bare breast with his hand without her consent. That's also a mistake.
He didn't touch me.
Okay. And you understand that Mr. Holtzclaw was convicted of sexual battery on that count as a result of your testimony?
Yes.
So that would have been a lie?
What would have been a lie?
The fact that he was charged with touching you?
I don't know what he was charged with. I know he was charged with 3 counts of me exposing myself.
Okay.
Just one further question, Ms. Barnes. You would agree, would you not, that you have to be 100% truthful about what you've told us today for you to prevail in your lawsuit?
Yes.
Okay. And you've been 100% truthful with us today about everything that you claimed?
Yeah,
you haven't lied to us, right?
No. Everything that I remember is what I remember. That's what I'm telling you.
So those
Okay, and yes, for those of you who are familiar, that was Kathleen Zellner's voice that you heard. And then this is the second clip. These were actually released by the family to the news media last year, or was it last year? And so these are clips that were from depositions that were released to the media. And hold on, what am I doing here?
TJ in chat, Rhonda says, I'm going to pee off the porch and charge the neighbors with accounts of me exposing myself.
But seriously though, right? Like how does that, I mean, you know, you have to consider that. And she doesn't even care. She's just like, yeah, no, I don't care. Yeah, I'm not gonna, yeah, it may be, but I'm not changing my story. So fuck off,
He
you know?
never touched me. It's the way she says it, and it's like she's getting pissed off because she has to keep saying it when they're asking the questions, you know. And she's like, no, he never touched me.
Right.
You know.
Okay, now this one is really significant in that a lot of you who are familiar with the case, or some who know a little about the case, are going to recognize this. This accuser giving her deposition is the one who claimed that the officer who raped her was a short black man. This is what she had to say during her deposition.
Hello?
Is this Sherry?
Yes?
Sherry, this is Detective Davis.
Yes, ma'am?
Okay. You sound frantic in your messages.
Oh yeah, because I don't know what's going on.
It's okay. That's why I've been wanting to find you and just ask you something, okay?
Okay.
I have received a tip on I work in sex crimes, and I've been working some cases, and I received a tip that you may have been sexually assaulted by a police officer.
Yes, I have. But I didn't say anything because I know that I know police department and police say all stick together.
Well, we ain't sticking together on this one.
Oh, okay.
So I would like to interview you.
I didn't ever get his badge number. I don't know anything. I was terrified. I just didn't know what was going on because he said I'll do that, or he was on. I don't know. I didn't know whether if I still did it, or is he gonna take me to jail or what. He was a black man.
Okay.
He was in a black and white police car.
Sherry, I believe you. If I didn't believe you, I wouldn't have been calling you, trying to find you. Okay. Let me ask you this. Tell me your description of him.
He's black.
He's okay. He's black male.
Muscular.
Muscular. How tall could you tell? You're pretty tall. How tall are you? How tall are you?
5'11".
Is he taller than you or shorter than you?
Like right here, maybe like that.
So you think he's shorter than you?
Yeah.
Okay. What kind of car did he have?
A black and white one.
Black and white car?
Oklahoma City police car.
Okay. Well, let me tell you this. I want to get a DNA sample from you today. And the reason I want to get a DNA sample is because I know what officer did this to you. Okay? And there is some unknown female DNA on his pants that I took. And I want to see if it's yours. This is a waiver saying that you will let me, Kim Davis, and I'm a detective, and this is where we're located, are going to let me take buccal swabs. It's just Q-tips on the inside of your mouth to get a DNA sample so I can compare it to the DNA on his pants. Okay?
Yes,
One more question. When you described him as a black male, what, and I don't know, everybody's like, are you? Are you a medium color? What's your skin tone to you?
Oh my God.
And what was he?
He's darker.
He's darker than you? Darker than your skin tone? Okay.
Okay, would you raise your right hand, please? Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
You state your full legal name?
Sherry Louise Michelle Smith.
Who contacted you? If you
Kim
recall?
Davis.
Detective Davis?
Yes.
Okay. And where did she call you on the phone, or did she meet you in person?
She called me on the phone.
Okay. And what did you tell her on the phone?
She asked me if I had she asked me if I had any problems with the police officer, and I told her yes.
Did you meet her in person after the phone call?
Yes, sir.
And where did that meeting take place?
The DA's in that building next to the courthouse.
Okay. How tall are you?
5'11".
5'11". All right. And do you recall explaining to Miss Davis how tall this officer was that assaulted you?
Yes, I do.
Okay. And I'm going to hand you another exhibit. We marked it as exhibit number 4. That's a video still of you explaining to the officer how tall the person was that assaulted you. Do you recognize yourself in that image?
Yes, sir.
Is that you?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. Now, how tall did you tell was the person that assaulted you?
I don't recall how tall I said he was, but I did say that he was shorter than I was.
Okay. And we say shorter than you by about how much? I mean, in that image, it looks like you're holding your hand up maybe to your shoulders.
Yeah.
So he came up to about your shoulders?
Yeah.
So maybe 5'5", 5'6"?
Yes.
A shorter man?
Mm-hmm. Yes, sir.
And how else would you physically describe the officer other than by height?
I had said that he was black. He was dark complected. I think black, That's what I said.
I'm marking this plaintiff's Exhibit A. I have a copy for you here. Miss Alice, do you recognize this individual?
Yes, I do.
Okay. How do you recognize that person?
From court.
Okay. Do you recognize that person from any other time in your life?
No.
At the time you were at trial, did you believe you had seen that individual before?
No. I seen him. It's during trial, that's when I seen him.
Okay. Had you had any previous interactions with that man to your knowledge?
Not to my knowledge. Besides him.
What do you mean?
It's besides, I have never seen him but before trial. That's when I finally seen who accused of raping me. That is gut-wrenching to me. It's, and I think that my opinion, completely speculating, I think that Sherry Ellis is torn up during this part of her deposition. I feel like Sherry Ellis realizes that the man that she is now suing in a civil trial is not the man who raped her. And I think that it's eating her soul. And I feel like that's what I see during her deposition. It's just astounding to me, and it's so sobering to hear that and to watch that.
It is, but Kim Davis telling her, I know who did this to you. If she really was assaulted, she still had to change her story to match Kim's location and path, which we know didn't happen because Bates debunked the whole Daniel's AVL, even though he drove through the schoolyard after he had an interaction with Sherry. He did not stop where Sherry claims he stopped and raped her. He stopped out in the open, and Sherry wasn't in his car.
Right.
They departed back on the street. So
she still lied.
She still had to lie, but I don't know. You have to try to put yourself in the mindset of these women that after they agree to become a part of the case and things start getting twisted, these aren't sophisticated women who, can think, oh, I need to come up against this and tell them, no, that's not where it happened. And maybe, who knows what they're thinking. I don't know what these women could be thinking other than some of them were thinking a payday. Some of them were thinking, I hate the cops. But if the women who had truly been raped by someone, what were they thinking? Were they thinking, well, at least it's probably the same guy, at least they're getting him?
Yeah.
What are the chances that it's different guys?
Somebody different, right?
And then by the time they finally see him, because they don't show all these women photo lineups,
No.
so it's not like they're presented with this officer who, they should all recognize him because he's had a valid interaction with them. So he should look familiar to them.
Well,
But
some of them, I
wouldn't
think, like Sherry Ellis, it was quite a few months before, correct?
it was
The
May
stop
for
was.
her, wasn't it?
Yeah.
May?
And, she was
May.
probably stopped by a lot of police officers. And if nothing, major happened during that stop, I can see how she didn't remember Daniel. Maybe she was really high at the time,
Yeah, it can be
We
all
know
those.
he did stop her, but, yeah.
Yeah.
But anyway, they became a part of the case for one reason or another. And then, once they were in the case, you really just had to flow with the narrative. If we had
Yeah.
all the interviews recorded, then
Yeah.
it would tell a totally different story.
Yeah.
Definitely.
If we had been given access to all of the records as far as when the AVL records were pulled, actually, that would have completely blown up their timeline. I would bet my life on it. But they didn't give those things, and I don't think the defense attorney had probably ever worked with any kind of software or obviously had a case where he needed computer records that were like internal admin kind of functions where you could create an audit log of changes or just an audit log of keystrokes so you would know exactly who pulled the AVL at what time. That was available in a program, but it was, and Scott Adams asked for those things specifically, but he didn't say the word audit log, or he wanted the dates and who pulled those records. And Kim brings this bullshit police report with
on a spreadsheet.
Yeah, it was like a 2-paragraph police report that says that on these 3 or 4 people, she has recorded that she got the records on this date, this date, this date, and this date. And she didn't know about Rocky's girls because Rocky was on vacation or whatever. So, and that was the end of it. That was the whole end of the story with that.
But she didn't actually show the proof of it, right?
No proof,
No.
just her fabricated police report, which is no
Just, yeah.
different than her fabricated arrest warrant.
Right.
I want to jump back really quick to Sherry Ellis. I feel bad because I know we now are doing what I don't want to do, but it's so hard not to do it. But these are just little tidbits that are coming for you guys that are new to the case and wanting to learn more. We're kind of tossing out tidbits right now. But also, during the trial, when Sherry Ellis was asked to identify her attacker in court, she couldn't identify him. And she was then asked to stand up and look around the entire courtroom and see if she could identify her attacker, and she couldn't. If I'm not mistaken, to my recollection, she is the only one who could not identify her rapist in court at the trial of Daniel Holtzclaw.
The short black guy. Yeah.
Yeah, because she couldn't find a short black cop.
Yeah.
So I think that's important to also toss out there. And I have a question by Sheila Hawkins. It says, isn't there an officer that has been in trouble for misconduct? We're not going to go into any of that right now, but yes, there are 2 that we know of for sure in the Spring Lake Division who
Both
have
black,
had,
right? Mm-hmm.
no, just one.
No, one was the short
One was
black
black,
cop.
one was white. Yeah. And one was a short black cop. And the other was a white cop, and I've got a very little information on him. His case was, he was actually terminated. I'm not going to go into it. We'll talk about it when we come to it. But there are 2 who were actually talked about, not in the trial, really, but that were, had issues with sexual misconduct.
That came out after the fact, after the conviction.
Yes, yes. They may have said the names in trial very briefly, brought up by Scott Adams in a different cross-examination somewhere, but nothing was ever, they were never investigated. Let me just put it to you that way. Neither one of these men were seriously looked at.
We didn't see their AVL records.
No. Yeah, well, and I'm sensing some sarcasm, Liam, because with all of the other accusers, when they would be asked to identify the man who assaulted them, they would point out Daniel, and the attorney, the DA would say, okay, if this is the judge and this is this, and are you talking about the man sitting nearest to the judge? And they would say yes, and that was Daniel. And Sherry Ellis is the only one who could not do it. So I think that is so crazy and like this clip says, that at the end of that clip, Daniel was sentenced to 62 years on Sherry Ellis's charges. And it is horrible to me, that it's just, listen, I'm not going to say what anybody else should be thinking or saying, but at the very least, can we agree that if nothing else, Daniel deserves a new trial? I mean, I think he deserves to be exonerated and released personally, but at the very least, there's enough evidence to show that he should at least be granted a new trial, in my opinion. Yeah, they can't find the right person, so just pick any officer, and we'll choose Daniel. Yeah. You know what? It's okay. 62 years, and well, for that one that he didn't touch her, what was it? 32 years, okay? On Tabitha Barnes?
No, I don't think so.
I can't remember the years on Tabitha Barnes.
I think it was like 18 or something.
Okay, 18 years. So that one was 18 years where she said he didn't touch her.
Yeah, I'd have to verify that, but it's somewhere around that.
62 years is on Sherry Ellis, the one that we just watched, where she didn't even know who Daniel Holtzclaw was. She'd never seen him before trial. And she's the one that said it was a short black man.
Yeah, and in my opinion alone, Rhonda, that should mean his case needs re-looked at through the courts, the prosecution, everything. It all needs looked at again, because that man is sitting in jail for, just take the rest of them away, right? He's sitting in jail for 62 years for something he didn't do and somebody he never touched. And she has point blank came out and said, back then and now, it wasn't him. I didn't know him. It wasn't him.
Yeah.
So in my opinion,
it should count for something, right?
Yes, exactly. And I believe, and this is just my opinion, that I believe 1,000% Daniel is innocent. 1,000%. And I'm quite happy to say that out loud. Not just the fact that he needs a new trial, it needs looked at and everything like that, but that he is 1,000% innocent of everything that he has been accused of and has been sentenced for.
Amen. I agree. Thank you for
Rhonda,
saying that. Yes.
do you have a short clip of oh God, I can never get the name straight, but the one that said from the hospital, even if he didn't rape nobody or anything.
I do. If you guys want to chat for a couple of minutes while I locate it.
The one we've been covering. What's her name?
Shardarian Hill.
Thank you.
So let's see. Yeah, so these allegations with Janie Liggins happened on 6/18/14, and the first news coverage, Janie went to the news in silhouette. Daniel's name wasn't mentioned, but on 6/23/14. Then on 6/25/14, that's the same test came back negative. Janie Liggins' test came back negative. On 6/25, they found unknown female DNA on the pants. That's something else they didn't disclose, that there was male DNA in the sample. They actually testified that there wasn't. So, because they really didn't want to have to say there was male DNA in the sample, because that would more support a transfer scenario, which was the defense's narrative. They really didn't want that going on.
Touch DNA.
Touch DNA. Yeah, both. Yeah, the same thing. Yeah, touch, transfer. Yeah, see, the detectives were so dumb, or they're just lying. I think they're just dumb.
Good evidence.
They didn't believe in touch DNA, transfer DNA. They said it couldn't possibly happen. They said they've never had a case with
Never had a
touch
case.
DNA.
Yeah.
It just doesn't happen. It's rare. They're all talking like they're DNA experts and shit.
Well, and then Galen Gigger just it's so incredibly insulting in one of his news interviews. Calls Daniel's supporters crazy if they want to say that DNA in the inside of the pants was touch DNA. We're crazy if you want to say that.
Need to post the clip of that, and then I wish we had the actual footage from the trial, but the part where he says that in the closing statement.
Yeah.
What about this, Galen?
Yeah. Galen Gigger is horrible. He's a horrible, horrible individual. On the community page, I'm going to, in the next few days, post some flyers that I made last year, mostly regarding Adara and Galen Gigger, but just some things that have been out there for a while, but I think just it's time that we see them again. So, okay. I'm trying to see. I need to organize my, well, I have one, but I need to,
So, OCPD, the detective.
I'm the door.
You're the door?
Yeah, I'm so sorry. That's what happens when you don't preload this shit.
We needed a giggle.
Okay, sorry. Go ahead, Kay.
So the detectives didn't really even start soliciting allegations to try to find the unknown female DNA until after they got Terry Morris on board. A little bit after that, because they contact or they solicit allegations on Kayla Lyles on July 23rd, Sherry Ellis on August 1st. And then we have the Ferguson shooting and protests on August 9th in there. And then Florine Mathis on August 13th. Tabitha Barnes on August 14th. Carla Johnson also on August 14th, but wasn't she in jail too?
Who?
Carla Johnson, was she in jail when they interviewed her?
I don't think so.
I don't think so.
Don't forget the accusers that came forward that were proven to be liars.
Yeah.
Right.
And weren't a part of the
At
case,
some point.
including a male.
Right. That's so wild.
Yeah.
Let's see. So Tabitha Barnes on August 14th, Carla Johnson, August 14th, Carla Raines, August 15th. Then Daniel gets arrested August 21st. And then Rosetta Great, they contact in jail on August 27th.
They still hadn't found their DNA, right?
No, they still haven't found the DNA yet. There are 2 video interviews of Rosetta Great inside the jail that you can find either on one of Rhonda's Rosetta Great episodes, or you can go to Holtzclaw trial, or what is the other? What is Bates' other? Bates Investigates YouTube channel.
Investigate. Oh yeah.
DanielHoltzclaw.com, is it?
Yeah, I think they're also on Daniel Holtzclaw's YouTube channel.
So Brian Bates actually has 2 YouTube channels. One is called Bates Investigates, and the other one is called Holtzclaw Trial, and they're both Brian Bates YouTube channels.
And so that's Rosetta Great. She was interviewed the first time on August 27th. And then Shardarion Hill, the clip that Rhonda's going to play, is the accuser, which he was found acquitted on all of her counts. She was interviewed on... She contacted the sex crimes unit after she saw Daniel in a clip, on a news clip on Facebook. And that was on September 19th. Sarita Bowen on October 2nd, and then finally Adara Gardner on October 10th. And they also had Regina Copeland already. They were already working on her. She was down in Texas, but they had been in contact with her and her daughter on the phone, and they headed down to Texas to interview her on October 13th. So that's the timeline on all the victims getting interviewed and becoming a part of the case. And then, of course, before trial, Oklahoma City has a predetermination hearing on December 11th, and then the second day of it was December 28th. And they terminated Daniel. Sorry, I need to get a drink.
They terminated him basically a year before he was convicted.
I
They
wonder.
terminated him before he even went to trial. Sorry, go ahead, Sheree.
I wonder how often they terminate somebody before they're proven, you know.
It is interesting on a criminal charge, like charges like this, that they would have this predetermination hearing, which the testimony on it is pretty interesting and not matching with the facts of police reports and things. They lie a lot in this. And Daniel was there, but he had to remain silent because he hadn't been to trial yet, and anything he would say would have been used against him in trial, which he should have. In retrospect, he knows he should have taken the stand in his own defense, but he did trust his attorneys and took their advice. But he was terminated, and they proclaimed him to be guilty, the OCPD, on January 8th of 2015.
Long
Trial
before his trial.
Yeah, trial began on November 2nd of 2015. The verdict came down on his birthday, December 10th, 2015, and then he was sentenced in January 21st of 2016 to 263 years.
When I just also, this is something else I like to point out whenever we talk about the 263 years, you heard in the very beginning when I played that clip before we started, the judge reading all the different charges and all the different years associated with those charges. Typically, I mean, for God's sake, even Alex Murdaugh got his cases to run consecutively, right? His life sentences are run consecutively.
You mean concurrent, like together?
Or concurrently, yes. I'm sorry, I always do that. Yeah, even Alex Murdaugh's his sentences are running concurrent next to each other. Yeah, side by side. He's serving life sentences for 2 murders, but he's doing the time of 1 life sentence in a sense. And that's pretty typical to run sentences concurrent. Not in Daniel's case, in a case where nobody was murdered. His cases, every single one of his charges that he's found guilty on, all of the years that are associated with each and every charge are running consecutive. So he has to serve the first 16 years before the next 32 years can start. And then after the 32 years, then he can start serving the 62. That's, or however it's broken down. That is very unusual. I'm not saying it doesn't happen, but it's not common. And that's one of the reasons that Daniel's sentence is considered I can't remember the exact legal term of it, but it's harsh. It's incredibly harsh sentencing.
I mean,
even if he was guilty of all of these things, it's still considered excessive and harsh.
Yeah, it boggles my mind, Rhonda, that your judges over there can give you 100-year sentence. Right, normally here in the UK, now don't bank me on it, but the majority of the time, a life sentence here in the UK is 25 to 50 years. Why? Because that's how long most people live. So, by rights, if you've been sentenced to 50 years in jail and you're in your 40s when you've been convicted, you're going to die in prison. So you're in there for life, So why not just say you're in there for life? No, 263 years. You know what I mean? It is ridiculous. And now one of the people that he got 62 years for has now recanted and said nothing happened. You know what I mean?
Right.
It is absolutely ludicrous.
Well, no, the one that she's got 62 years on is the one that says basically he's not the one who did it.
Well, yeah.
So,
You know, it's just it's madness. It just is madness, and not only that, to put the cherry on the cake, is that this friggin' judge that gave him this 263 years is now facing allegations of sexual assault himself. You know what I
And
mean?
he's not a judge anymore. The former
No, he's
disgraced
former.
judge.
former
Yes,
disgraced.
former. Was it what? Former Judge Timothy Henderson.
yeah. No, it's just blah, blah, blah. It's very, very it's yes, exactly. Liam, those kinds of sentences are just retributive and have nothing to do with justice. Listen, I can't, there is not one part of me that thinks that it's, well, it just goes without saying. I don't even need to say it. It's absolutely inexplicable. Sorry, Susan. Unbelievable, reprehensible, and abhorrent that Daniel is serving 263 years and nobody was murdered. No child was assaulted or abused or molested or harmed.
Nobody was raped by him.
Yeah, well, yes. Nobody was raped. I mean, let's go with the, I believe 100% in his 100% innocence. Yes. But let's just say if he were guilty, which I don't believe at all in any of the cases, let's just say he were. That is still a unconstitutionally harsh sentence. And how the Supreme Court doesn't recognize that or didn't, well, they didn't even look at his case, but it's just it's blah. It makes me crazy. It makes me really, really crazy.
Can I run through the rest of this timeline real quick?
Oh, yeah. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry.
Oh no,
Go
it's
ahead.
all right. I was choking over here. Okay, so his verdict or his sentencing, January of 2016. The accusers filed federal civil lawsuits against Daniel, the city of Oklahoma City, Chief Bill City, Rocky Gregory, a few other people in February of 2016. And so then Daniel ended up, after the trial, he ended up with court-appointed counsel. And so they filed his direct appeal. And then like 4 months, I think, after they filed it, I'm going to read this little statement. It's about the secret hearing. So this is how they dealt with the issues in his appeal. So the direct appeal goes to the Oklahoma Court of Criminal Appeals, which is a panel of judges. And they sent an issue back to the trial judge, Judge Henderson, and ask him to deal with this issue because I mean, it was obviously an issue they wanted to keep quiet and find a way to seal transcripts and hide the issues because they're still trying to make sure that all they're worried about is just the finality of this conviction and making sure that it's upheld and that he exhausts all of his opportunities before they get exposed. So they had these 2-day secret hearings about Oklahoma City Police Department analyst Elaine Taylor, who did the DNA analysis. So they had on June 26th and 27th of 2017, they were presided over by then Judge Henderson. The subject was the lab manager Campbell Ruddock's written review of Elaine Taylor's trial testimony in Daniel's case. Mr. Ruddock wrote a report because Holtzclaw, his legal brief raised a legal claim that his trial attorney was ineffective by not challenging Miss Taylor's flawed testimony. So Henderson concluded there was no impeachment evidence against Miss Taylor in Mr. Ruddock's written review, but this is contradicted by Ruddock's deposition testimony, where he describes negative comments he made in a verbal review of Elaine Taylor's testimony, even before he was asked by some unknown person to write the written review that was the subject of these secret hearings. Judge Henderson also concluded that Mr. Ruddock's written review was part of Miss Taylor's personnel file, and therefore the city of Oklahoma City was the only entity with authority to release the written review to the public. Henderson's ruling ignored that the city of Oklahoma City had already shared the written review with outside entities such as the Oklahoma County District Attorney's Office and the Attorney General's Office. And so these 2-day hearings were conducted with, without Daniel or his counsel present. So, and they called him a personnel issue, which is why the transcripts were sealed and why, people weren't allowed to attend. It was a closed hearing. It's just unbelievable that they got away with this. It went through several news cycles and then it kind of faded into the distance until something else happened, and then a few more news cycles and then it just faded into the distance. But you would think in the United States of America, when you hear that someone's direct appeal got manipulated by a judge in a closed court without him or his counsel being able to be present, even though the district attorney's office people were present, that would deserve a Supreme Court look, but it didn't.
Not only were they not allowed to be present, but Daniel and his attorney were not even noted. They didn't even know about it until it hit the news, as far as when I recall that they learned about it. They didn't even know about it until it was in the news. So not only were they not allowed to attend, they didn't even know about it. Sorry.
Right. And then when they filed a motion that it was unfair and all this, the judge's ruling was that although Mr. Holtzclaw and his counsel should have been able to attend, we found nothing that was exculpatory for Mr. Holtzclaw, which ends up being a lie once you depose Campbell Ruddock, the lab manager, and find out what the secret hearings were about. It was a lie, but all of this stuff, all these transcripts are still sealed. Parts of them had been heavily redacted. Parts, his court-appointed attorney that did the direct appeal, he was allowed to come and stand there and read them. I think it took him 2 different days. He had to come back to finish reading them. But his current trial counsel his current counsel has he's not been able to read them. They're still sealed. So that's some crazy town. Rhonda has a really great compilation video of all of the news stories, talking about the secret hearings and how they were handled and just that whole shit show. That's one of the better montages for sure. So then Daniel's appeal is so Henderson handles these issues, sends it back to the Oklahoma Court of Criminal Appeals. They sit on this. So I told you these secret hearings. He filed his direct appeal in February. They had these hearings in June of 2017. And they did not give him a decision. They did not deny, or his appeal was denied, actually. They upheld the court's verdict, the court's decision. Denied his appeal 8/1/2019. So from February of 2017 to August of 2019 is how long they made him wait for an answer. Immediately, they started working on a petition for writ of certiorari, which his current counsel filed before the United States Supreme Court. That was filed in December 30th of 2019. So just a few months after the Court of Criminal Appeals denied his direct appeal. And it didn't take the court that long to decline to hear it. So they say petition for writ of certiorari denied by the U.S. Supreme Court, March 9th, 2020. What it really means is that they declined to even take a look at it, which sucks because Rodney Reed from Texas, he's a wrongfully convicted guy from Texas. He had something before the court at that very same time. And I know that the Supreme Court sometimes bundles like issues, and I so hoped that they would take all the wrongful conviction cases, issues, or at least those two, and would have pulled him aside to hear him at a different time. But that didn't happen. Let's see. Then the accusers abandoned their federal lawsuit against Daniel. So that civil suit was going on for years and had a ton of people putting a lot of hours of research and work into it. And it was about to go to trial, and they dismissed Daniel from the case. September 26, 2022. That's kind of the end of my timeline here that I have.
But they granted summary judgment to the city, right?
The judge ruled in favor of the city of Oklahoma City, Bill City, and Rocky Gregory, granting their motions for summary judgment against the plaintiffs. The plaintiffs, except for Sherry Ellis and Carla Raines, appealed the judgment in favor of the city by filing their appeal before the 10th Circuit U.S. Court of Appeals. But then, oddly enough, even after the city of Oklahoma City had been granted summary judgment, which for those of you who don't know what that means, it basically means they had been released from the suit. No financial responsibility. The city, before this thing is heard in the 10th Circuit, U.S. Court of Appeals, they go and settle with these accusers that are left and give them
give them money.
They were out of it. They weren't obligated to give them a dime. They had been released from it, exonerated from it. I mean, the only thing that they were probably thinking is they were going to probably appeal the Judge Heaton's ruling of summary judgment and try to get the city of Oklahoma City back into get that overturned so that they could sue them. Because that's where the money is. That's where the insurance policies are. Those are the big pockets. You know, and they were shocked that when everyone was granted summary judgment and it was just Daniel left in the case, they were shocked that Daniel wanted to continue on to trial. They weren't expecting him to say, yes, we're proceeding on to trial.
He wanted discovery.
Well, yeah, right. He wanted discovery, and this has been the only way that he's really been able to get his side of the story out there. Right. I mean, look, these depositions that ended up being public, we wouldn't have those if not for him getting the civil suit filed against him and being able to ask these accusers anything, you know.
And I mean, this is just my opinion. Just what you're saying, that the city were exonerated, but they paid out anyway.
Mm-hmm.
To me, see, Liam, great minds think alike. Hush money. That was hush money, because I think, in my opinion, my speculation, I think through all this, in some way or another, they women were promised that they would get something, whether it be money, reduced sentence, I don't know. But when they then realised that they weren't going to get a penny with the city and all the rest of them being exonerated, I think the city has thought, oh no, wait a minute, they can open their mouth and they can say stuff that we don't want them to say.
They were used.
About being bribed or, promises made or something like that. So in my opinion, it was hush money. And that's why they paid out when they didn't need to pay a penny.
They were coerced. What they were.
I also, the settlement wasn't a lot of money. And our lawyer friend, Travis, actually did the math for us, I don't know, sometime earlier this year. And his estimation, and I wish I could remember the amount that he said, but I feel like what he said was somewhere around $500 each.
I thought it was $15,000 each.
Well, not by the time when Travis figured it out, not by the time all the fees and everything were taken out and
oh, good Lord.
Dispersed, and costs and attorneys contingency fees were paid and all that. I don't remember what it was, but about $15,000 was what each of them were to. If you divided the total amount, which was $166,800 or something like that, and divided it by the 9, I think worked out to something close to the 15,000.
That could work out to be a lot of money, a lump sum like that. It's not a lot to some people, but to others, it is a lot. And to addicts, That is a lot of money. That is a lot of highs, you know.
Right.
And I'm
Right.
not saying that all of them were still on drugs and everything like that at the time, because I don't know. They could have cleaned themselves up and everything else. But all I'm saying is that an addict say it themselves. Once an addict, always an addict. And sometimes you swap one addiction for another addiction, you know. And for an addict, and I don't care whether it's alcohol, sex, you know, drugs, whatever, if you've got an addiction, £500 is a lot of money, you know. So, like I say, it might not be to some, but it is to others.
Right. Oh, yeah, absolutely. I agree. Okay. So I'm going to play a couple of short video clips and then we're going to wrap this up. I don't know if my panel wants to spend another week on kind of covering just tidbits of the different cases, or if we're just going to go ahead and start with Janie Liggins.
I think that was a really good overview.
I think so.
Of the case, yeah.
Yeah, I feel like yeah, a great overview. That's a good way to put it. And to give too many more bits and pieces of other parts of the cases of different accusers, I think starts the confusion. So you know what Kay has shared, and you know what, and I will also tell you that I will probably continue to use clips from Brian Bates because he is the master. I mean, he has, up to Shardarian Hill's case, he has, you know, the commentary and the knowledge behind, you know, the way he breaks down each of the cases is extremely helpful. So
yeah, but not only at that, Rhonda, it helps that he was actually part of Daniel's legal team in the beginning, you know.
Right.
So he's seen everything. He's seen the interviews, he's seen the police reports, he's seen the documentation. He was probably even at trial, you know, and doing investigations, looking into things and everything like that. So he is, you know, they say go to the source. Well, he is the source because he was there. He was involved. So there's no one better, really, apart from Daniel and the lawyer that he had at the time to get that information from, because they were there. You know, they experienced all of it.
Right. No, exactly. Yeah, so we do rely on a lot of what Brian Bates shares, and or you know what Brian Bates has in his podcasts, because I trust it explicitly. Is that the right word? And so you know, we'll use that, but you know, also any documents and transcripts that we've managed to get, you know, since then, since Bates's involvement, you know, that we can get our hands on, we will also share that as well. So so I think it was Susan that asked that I share this clip. Now, this looks funky because I was trying to make a short out of it and I was completely unsuccessful. I'll get it figured out eventually, but this is what my attempt was, so pardon how it looks.
This is good evidence.
Well, you tell me.
I think so, because I mean, y'all, even if he didn't even rape nobody or nothing, he's been in contact with people that he arrested.
And yeah, there's that one. And then, I mean, Shardarian Hill has nothing to do with, well, directly with Janie Liggins, but this one has given us, been good for a chuckle for several weeks now. So we're just going to share it as well, because why the fuck not?
Hey, look, I'm the door.
You're the door.
Hey, look, I'm the door.
You're the door.
Hey, look, I'm the door.
You're the door.
Oh gosh, that's just so funny to us, because Rocky Gregory is such an idiot in our minds that he literally questions her. You're the door? It was funny, and we couldn't get enough of it, or I can't get enough of it. Just a brief indicate, and then at some point during we were reading the trial transcript, she said, I think I was reading the part of Shadarian Hill, that first part, and she said in the trial, I believe it was, she said, I'm the bed. I was like, what? I like stopped in the middle of reading, and I was like, what the fuck is she talking about? I thought she was the door. Anyway, it's just, Rocky always brings a level of comedy to his, if it's not comedy, it's utter irritation and frustration with him, because he just comes off as a very unintelligent detective in my mind. So,
As
all
we
right.
would say, as we would say here in the UK, Rhonda, he's 2 sandwiches short of a picnic.
Yes. Yeah, for sure.
Alice, we say that here too, or his elevator, doesn't really go up to the top 2 floors.
There's a French fry short of a Happy Meal, or not the sharpest tool in the shed. We have all kinds of them too. Yeah, but you know what? He does that to himself. I don't know. He could be a, intelligent individual, but he sure doesn't help himself at all.
No.
Any questions? Let me grab a couple comments here. Liam says he has no concept of metaphor or hypotheticals. Oh, of course not. I don't think he doesn't know what they are. He doesn't know what they are, much less how to spell either one of them, I'm sure. Kim Davis, I just find purely disgusting. She is just vile and disgusting. There's nothing, she's a horrible individual, in my opinion. So hopefully, for those of you who are brand new and wanting to get a start on the case, and to those of you who have been kind of paying attention and jumped in somewhere in the middle and are listening to the podcasts from Bates, are still trying to kind of get a grasp. To those of you who've been around a long time and know as much as we know, hopefully this was a good refresher and a good way to get everybody kind of re-energized, rejuvenated, and excited again about covering this case. It's really hard because you got 13 different accusers, and when you're trying to break down each of their cases, and it's taking us 3, 4, 5 weeks to do it, I feel like it just kind of starts to I don't know, drone on or something, like, oh my gosh, again with more of this, because it, so hopefully this helps. Hopefully this helped tonight, and we can come back next week with fresh eyes and get everybody started on the first accuser, Jamie Liggins, or at least on June 14th. And we will very quickly, after that, insert Terry Morris. In the Bates podcast, he addresses Jamie Liggins and then Terry Morris. So we're gonna do the same thing. But Kay, like you've heard a little bit tonight, has has done a very good job of making the connection about why Terry Morris needed to be a part of Jamie Liggins. Might not make sense now, but the way Kay explains it and breaks it down, it makes perfect sense. So Sheila says, I'm in the middle of great information. Oh, hopefully you mean from us.
Yeah, she means that she's came in the middle. She started coming in onto the channel in the middle, so she wasn't sure. And she says it's great information that we've given tonight.
Gotcha. Thank you, Alice. I need pictures. Thank you so much. All right, so we're gonna wrap it up. I want to give everybody an opportunity to make some comments before we get out of here, because I know everybody's tired and hungry. And so we'll start with Jack. What you got?
Well, I do have something to, admit. I'm not really hungry because I ate while we were listening to
I
clips
know.
and stuff.
You ate. You were definitely silent.
Yeah, I was pretty hungry. But yeah, a really good introduction for people that are unfamiliar with, some of the case elements. There's definitely a lot more in it, and if you're just familiar with headlines and that kind of thing, you're missing a lot. Got to watch Daniel in the Den. Certainly listen to on Rhonda's channel, because she, her and Kay and Sheree and others go in deep. That's behind the scenes of things that you didn't understand of what happened in this trial. It was horrible. And then finally, of course, Brian Bates' podcast. You definitely need to check them out if you want to know more, because it was my fault that I introduced Rhonda to Daniel in the Den to Rhonda long ago.
Yep.
And she watched it and she was immediately hooked.
Yeah. I knew what my calling was at that almost immediately.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, if it hadn't been for the Avery Dassey case, this very one could be mine as well, no doubt. There's just so much wrong with it. It's hard to even know where to start, except for at the beginning, and to just start numbering things. It's like, how did that happen? And then reading through the transcripts now, that we've been doing the last several months, and how much basically Galen Giggler led. He led so many witnesses. It was crazy. It was like he's testifying for them. And Scott Adams, most of the time, just didn't say a damn thing. I'm like, dude, what are you doing? I don't know. Maybe he just was overwhelmed and thought, man, I got to go through this 13 times. He's going to do this, and I'm going to be sick by the time I get. But to me, it doesn't matter. If you keep doing it, if you do it in the beginning and force him to change tact and make the person testify, that would have ended, because he could have come up on the third or fourth one and said, look, Judge, I'm getting tired of telling this guy to quit leading the witness. Can you tell him to stop so we can proceed with the trial and let them testify? That never happened. So anyway, good stuff. I'm going to let Alice give her closing comments. Thanks, everybody, for coming, and thanks to the panel.
Thank you, Jack.
And there we go.
All right. Alice, what you got?
Well, it's a great podcast, Rhonda. I think it was a great idea to go back and recap, and the way Kay laid out the timeline like she has from beginning right up to date to where he sort of is now, I think has been brilliant for people who, like you say, have came in the middle of us, doing these podcasts and everything like that. Just everything that Jack says, please, share, go and listen to the podcast, everything like that. Do the YouTube thing for Rhonda as well. Like, share, subscribe, tell your friends. More people that know about Daniel's case, the better. And right now, out there, this is the only channel that I've seen that has got factual information and people that know what they're actually talking about. So I would recommend it to anybody. So please do the same. And thanks to everyone in chat, and thanks to Rhonda for having me back on panel.
Well, thank you very much, Alice, for always being supportive. We really appreciate it. And Susan.
Yeah. Like I said, I think that was a really good overview, Rhonda, especially for people that are unfamiliar. And I just want to say thank you to all the people that are here listening to this. I know Daniel's grateful for that. I know his family is grateful for that. And, you know, it's just, what can we do? We can keep it in the daylight, you know, because otherwise these cases just get lost in oblivion. And it's just so important. It's just, you know, it's frustrating. It's frustrating that we can't do more, but, you know, do what we can. So thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Susan. I 100% concur with everything you said. And Cherie, I don't recall.
Well, I agree with everybody. It was a good overall review and helps make the connections between all these individual accusers that we've been going through. And keep talking till he's walking, please.
Absolutely. Thank you, Cherie. And Kay.
Yeah, this case, it's just a crazy one. You know, but there are a lot of elements or a lot of things that happened in this case that happen in a lot of other wrongful conviction cases. You know, when detectives stop following facts in search of the truth and start doing things like, you know, presuming someone is guilty, helping inflame the media by releasing, you know, like Prater was releasing tidbits to the media to keep them going. That was the district attorney at the time. We had flawed forensic DNA analysis and a biased police investigation. We had ineffective trial counsel. You know, a biggie, we had prosecutorial misconduct. And it's just too bad that I don't know. Someone wrote about Daniel's case. They said that the tragedy of Daniel's case is that our society's noblest goals to end racism, sexism, and police brutality cause people to convict an innocent man. You know, basically believing that Daniel was guilty after an allegation filled with contradictions and unsupported by negative SANE kit tests. The biased police department investigators ignoring evidence of his innocence, and then crafting a case to match their false narrative, and encouraging and soliciting and procuring additional wrongful allegations to pin them all on Daniel. I mean, the piling on that happened with this case, it's sickening to look at, and it's sickening when you hear the detectives giving you a little bit of insight as to, you know, the way they think and the way their investigative minds work. You know, when there's one, we don't always get things done, but with 13 and their narrative's the same, their MO's the same, then you can get something done. Yeah, you mean, what does that translate to? Let's pile a bunch of shit on this guy and see what sticks. Something's got to stick. And he was convicted on 18 of 36 charges. and sentenced to 263 years in prison, and that sucks. Anyway, I think it was a good show tonight, so hopefully it'll be valuable for people who want to dip their toes into the case and kind of get a feeling. We had a bunch of good questions in the chat tonight that made the conversation even more informative for people who are just getting involved. So ready to put it in the can and get on to the next one.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it was. And I listen to you, those of you who are in the chat. You guys don't know how much more, I don't know what the word is, but how easy it is to be interactive with you when you're asking questions and making comments about the content, especially asking questions. If you don't ask the questions, the answer might not ever be given. It might be a question that somebody's never even thought of before. And so it's, I feel like it's your contribution from the chat is probably, to me, the most important thing of doing this every week. Trying to answer your questions or finding the answer for you if we don't know it right offhand, keeping you engaged so that you want to continue to engage with the case is very critical for me, for all of us on the panel. So, please keep coming with your questions. And, if you know anybody else who you think might be interested in a case that's so complex and so twisted and so dirty, please, share this with them. There's never enough support anywhere from anyone. So, and just another reminder, if you're interested in sharing a picture or a avatar and your name for me to put on a collage for a card for Daniel for Christmas, I would love for you to get in touch with us either on the Discord, or I'm going to put my email address in the chat right now, and you can also email to me if you want it to be, or you can DM me on Discord too, or you can email it to me private as well. And so I want to grab a couple of comments here really quick. TJ, thank you. Sheila says, ouch. Where did she say that? Ouch. Okay, so true. Liam, remember, 13 don't come forward. The detectives track down a lot of people to find most of the finalists. Yes, absolutely. 13 more, then why not join the party unless it didn't happen? Ah, interesting. There's my email address, or we've put the Discord channel link in the chat a couple of times. So you can also join us on Discord and or contact me through DM on Discord. All those will work. So we will be back next week, next Thursday at 5 p.m. Central, and we will begin the Jamie Liggins story, and hopefully get you hooked even more. If what we've told you tonight about Liggins' case doesn't already have you hooked, we'll get you next week. So to everybody on the panel, thank you guys all so much for everything you contribute and for your support. And everybody in the chat, thank you for showing up and asking the questions and being a part of a support team for somebody who was tragically wronged in the criminal injustice system. Until next time, peace out.